There we go. Okay, so guys, joining me today is Kamal, and we are going to chat a little bit about what a CV is, how you create it. And back in the day when I did a lot of recruitment in the mining industry, I did it for about 20 years for a company called Geoscientists. Things were a lot simpler than what they are today. So the simplicity of a CV is literally this: it's a written selfie. So when you take a photo of yourself that you want to post online, you do it in such a way that it will shine. It's a nice photo. So your CV is literally that. It's a written selfie. It shows people who you are without them physically seeing you first, because they see your piece of paper first. They see that piece of paper before they see the human being behind it. Um, and somebody, one of my clients actually told me this many years ago. And in this industry, there's a lot of report writing, a lot of documentation, and it's almost a type of an example of how you would potentially present a project plan, a report, feedback on something. So the most important parts here basically would be that, and somebody said to me, is it cheating? And no, it's not cheating. You need to tailor your CV to the specific job you're applying for. So your fundamentals on your CV stay the same, but the tree, the Christmas tree is the Christmas tree, but the decoration, the little bits that you fill in, that is what you're going to change and tailor for each specific job that you apply for. Another important thing to remember is that you don't need to include irrelevant or outdated information. Nobody needs to know that you were a prefect in primary school. It is what is now. It's in the here and it's in the now. The most recent is what's the most important. If you've done any field work, any bit of work that showcases your technical skills, so you've been studying, but now you've gone to the field or you've been with a company for a little bit of an internship, that is very important to highlight in your CV. All right. We're going to touch very briefly. It's just a pointer. Don't use generic or vague language. Be specific. So we'll get to that and we'll explain what we mean with that. Very important, proofread for spelling and grammar errors. Believe it or not, I looked at my presentation this morning and I must have spell checked 3 times. I did grammar check 3 times. There was still a mistake in my presentation. So you do it again and again. You get somebody else to read it. Get someone else to look at your CV. Don't put too much information in there so that it makes it difficult to read. It's literally like staccato, step by step, boom, 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 and there we have the package. Um, don't leave out key technical skills or any software proficiencies that are important in your field. If you've touched on something like a micromine where you've been exposed to it, etc., put that in and tell people, how did you use it? Okay. And this is where it's very important. You know, you're a member of the GSSA. Professional memberships speak volumes. It means that you are in the industry, you're an integral part, you're following what's going on, you're going to all of these beautiful events that Rory has outlined that's here for the year. And that is very important for people to see. And another very important part is your driver's license. If you've got your driver's license, put it down. As a life skill, if you don't have your driver's license, please get it, specifically in this field. Exploration, you're driving around, you need to drive. Okay. So we're going to start off with, and I'll show you later on what your CV is going to look like, but you're going to start with a strong profile, okay? It needs to have a personal statement. What is that? A personal statement is a very short, very powerful paragraph on you. What have you got to offer? Where would you like your career to go? Where do you see yourself in the future? We don't have to be outdated and say in 5 years I'm here, in 10 years I'm here. We don't have 10 years I'm there. We don't need to put that down in writing in that way. And also who you are as a person. And Kamal will touch on how software can help us put that all together nicely. Okay. So like we said, tailor your statement to fit the job you're applying for. So you have one CV and now you see that there's an exploration job available. You are going to tailor your statement to fit an exploration position. You're not cheating. You're a geologist. You can go into mining, you can go into exploration, you can go into software. There's a lot of fields within this industry, but you're going to tailor your personal statement to fit that particular job description. Okay. Mention some specifics about the job of the company so the employer knows you've done your research and your specifics why you want to work for them. I'll show you. I used Glencore as an example. Who are these people? They are a leading mining company. They've been around for X amount of years, and their values are X, Y, Z. And you put that in there. And you can only get to that if you look up the company. Use action verbs. Managed means I did it. I was responsible for means I was responsible. I'm not continuously responsible. So be very clear in the way that you use your action verbs. I spearheaded sounds much better than I managed. Saying that I supervised, I outperformed, I achieved. I achieved top marks in my final year. My honors was XYZ, but you use those words outperformed, achieved. You outperformed the others. That means you are on top. You didn't lead the team. You literally spearheaded the team. It sounds better. It looks better. When you describe yourself and you use things like, I am an organized individual with great communication skills, that's your opinion. You see yourself as an organized person with great communication skills. Yes, you are organized. Yes, you do have great communication skills. But rather say something like, I have gained a reputation as someone with meticulous organizational skills. When you say I've gained a reputation, it means other people have seen that you are organized. They can see that you're meticulous. They've commented on it. Be that your lecturer, be that the person where you did a bit of an internship on, etc. But it is somebody else substantiating your skill. It's not you saying, I am that person, all right? And then we read on with that sentence. With meticulous organizational skills, with the ability to purposefully engage with individuals from varied backgrounds. I can communicate with everyone. Okay, I can talk to you. I'm talking to you guys now. But am I purposefully communicating with you? Am I driving my message across? And how varied is everyone? So you can speak to your peers at university. You can successfully engage in conversation with your lecturers. So again, it's the words that you guys use, and we can touch on that when we get to the actual writing. Okay. So this you can just sort of read, and I mean, Nalene, the guys can take this home if they want, okay? But here's an example of a personal profile. You don't say, I'm a recent graduate, ready to tackle the world of geology or mining, except, like we said now, your action verbs. You say, what degree did you complete? Where did you complete it? What are you eager to do? You want to take your theoretical knowledge through your studies and with the practical skills you've developed through fieldwork, research, observational experience to gain meaningful hands-on exposure. Remember, exposure experience. You're going to be exposed to everything now in order to gain experience in the geology industry, okay? Then your goal, right? A goal is personal. However, in the beginning of your career, when you start looking, it can be a little bit more broader, a little bit more like, sort of not flaky. That's not the word I'm looking for, but a little bit of sort of like just the outside, just the packaging, not the full inside of your gift. Okay, so you want to start your career because that's where you are. You're in the earth sciences. That's your industry. And now this is where you've read who you are going to be working for. You are going to say, my goal is to begin my career in earth sciences at a leading mining and exploration company that values both professional and personal development. You know that because when you saw the ad, you Googled the company. You saw, what do they do for their CSI? What do they do for their development, not just as the sort of like technical bits and pieces of it and forging ahead in mining and exploration, but for the human touch too, okay? You say there you've represented your student council, okay? You can also say that you're a member of the GSSA. I left that bit out. But again, you say you've built a reputation for being a well organized and for engaging confidently with individuals from diverse backgrounds. So again, somebody has commented on the skills that you have. You haven't waved around and said, I've got this skill, right? Now, your academic results reflect a strong sense of purpose and a commitment to delivering high quality work within deadlines. What does that mean? Your results were good, so you had a purpose, you achieved your purpose, you were committed to it, and therefore you delivered high quality work within the deadlines and the restrictions that the university imposed on you, right? That means you can take that and do that in a job. You've just done it through an entire university career, and that means you can take the step and move forward to the next one. Okay. And then again, you don't know this, but you believe that the combination of your technical skills, interpersonal strengths, and alignment with Glencore's values makes me a strong fit for the junior geologist role and the company's culture. You've addressed the company, you've addressed the position you've applied for, and here you can see why you need to change your personal profile for every single job. You can't keep this profile for a job that you're applying for at Glencore if you're applying to Anglo American, for argument's sake, or ERM or Micromine, etc. So each one changes. This in your career path at the moment is the part of your CV that's going to change the most. So you need to start when you do your CVs is have like a little folder on your computer, and it'll say CVs, and you'll go applications, and you have each company that you applied for, and you put each CV in there. So when they want you to resend it, you can just go. You don't, take your original and change it, so that you're just sitting with the last one, which might be Glencore that you applied to. So keep the CVs that you are applying or using to apply for the various jobs at the various companies. Okay, so that's where we are in terms of your personal profile and how it needs to look. We want action verbs. We want to use words where people have indicated that you have a certain skill. You want to showcase that you are somebody who was involved in student life, involved with organizations like the GSSA, then you put that in there. You need to show that academically you were good, and you were good because you managed to tackle this all with a purpose, and ultimately that purpose spills over in your career. They can see it. This person wants to grow and move ahead. All right. And then you bring it in personally by featuring the name of the company that you're applying to and the role that you're applying to. When we look at our actual CV and we're going to look and see what it looks like, it's very important that you could just start with. So it'll be your profile, who you are, and then you're going to focus on your education. And it's always what you've done last at the top. So you've got your honors, you've got your 1, 2, 3, then you've got your high school qualification. You got an exemption, you went to university. Okay. That is almost just like fillers. All right. So we want to make sure we put in solid things. So all that, remember in the beginning we said, don't overcrowd your CV. That is an example of overcrowding. Putting in there that you were, you did math and you did this, and take that out. Just say matriculated, the year, the school. All right. And then you build on that going upwards. I'll show you when we get to the CV. Make sure that you list any specific courses you took related to the job you applied for. So if you went on a short little course for core logging, or the GSSA hosted something, put that in there under a little heading that says courses or webinars, etc., that I attended and that I had a hand in, and where my technical skills were basically added onto, with physical interactions, really. And then you need to list the skills that you acquired during those those courses. So don't just say fieldwork course. Say, what did you learn in that fieldwork course? What skill did you acquire? In my fieldwork course, I acquired a skill to use a GPS properly. Something along that line. All right. You may not have, so then the next part of your CV is listing your relevant work experience. So you may not have a lot of work experience at the moment because you're still studying, but you might have done some work somewhere. So you could have done something like tutoring. You could have been an au pair, etc. Remember, every job that you do shows that you are reliable. You can pitch up, you can fulfill a function, and then you go home and you come back and you do it again. All right. That's the purpose of putting any little bit of work experience into your CV. All right. Did you tutor? Put it in. Yes, you didn't tutor geology, but you tutored math to a grade 8. Perfect. You were there, you were supportive, you pitched up, you did your job. Right. We're going to keep it brief and simple, right? So you're going to mention your job title, when you worked there, and a few of your responsibilities. Okay. If you can relate these to the job that you're applying for, fantastic. That would be fabulous, but you don't have to. That work experience just needs to be there. And don't include the section if you don't have any work experience, okay? I would say then you're adding more things in your other sections. So if you never worked, but you attended a lot of courses, field trips, etc., then you bump your CV up with that, okay? We're going to talk about responsibilities, okay? Now, responsibilities aren't just when somebody works. You're responsible every day of your life. You're responsible to get yourself to class. You're responsible to open your books. You're responsible to learn, and you're responsible for doing well. And those responsibilities pull into your CV. So in your studies, field studies, mapping, data collection, in order to interpret geological features and processes, analyze and interpret data collected in the field, in the lab, that sort of idea. Okay, so you can see the list there. You can work it out for yourself. That that is what you've done. Again, if those responsibilities are in a work environment, so you've listed your work experience, tutor for X person, then your responsibilities you'll fill in there. All right. On your personal side, you've got to put in, did you serve on the SRC? And in what role did you do it? Did you arrange student gatherings? That means that you are an organizer. You can put things together. Responsible for monthly newsletters. That means that you made sure data was collected, data was put into a format that was acceptable, and it was released. Responsible for any financial functions. Were you a treasurer somewhere? Did you manage the money? That means you are super responsible in terms of you're trustworthy. You've managed people's money. Okay. Were you part of a social club? What was your role? Did you do any volunteer work? Volunteer work is very important simply because companies are responsible for doing social responsibility. So if you can show that you are that way sort of inclined and that you enjoy doing volunteer work, that speaks about you as a human being as well. You're willing to give some of your time for others. All right. Your skills. What are your skills? Again, at your level, it's your fieldwork, your data collection, your GIS mapping, interpretation of that, GPS navigation, geophysical instrumentation and operations, technical and report writing, team collaboration and communication. What soft skills have you gained in any part-time roles that you may have? So we'll show you where the skills go. But you put these down. Now, a skill as geological fieldwork isn't just when you've gone and worked as a geologist. If you've been in the field and you've done field work and you've picked up that skill, you now already have it. That you can take into your job. And so those skills lists there you can see will carry on. In a nutshell, this is what my suggested CV template would be. A one-pager, very quick, very easy. So you'll see your names at the top. It says you're a graduate geologist. And then your profile. The profile is what we spoke about, your action verbs. Who are you? Where do you want to go? What resonates with that particular company? Okay. That's on the right-hand side. Your work experience will go in there. And just like with your education, your latest work experience goes at the top. On the left-hand side is a little column. You'll put your email, you'll put your telephone number, you'll say, where do you live? You don't need to put your full address. Somebody actually mentioned this to me the other day, and I never thought of it that way. Don't put your street number, house number, whatever. Just put, where do you stay? I live in Bryanston, Johannesburg. That's all they need to know. And put there if you're willing to relocate, because a lot of these jobs are not necessarily in Joburg. And don't assume that people will just know that you're willing to relocate. And sometimes you're not willing to relocate. So they need to know that. Your driver's license can go in there, and that's where you put in your education. University, school, other. All right, others, and then school at the bottom. Your professional membership goes on that side. And then you can put your languages, and that's where you're going to put your skills on the left-hand side there. Any computer skills, and then any community services that you might have completed. Assisted Society for Animals in Distress on outreach days, baked cupcakes for CHOC, that sort of idea. Okay. And then I'm going to head on over to Kamal, because I've taken up a big chunk of this time, and he's going to talk to you about ATS and AI.
Excellent. Thanks, Vilna. Just to confirm, I am audible?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. And maybe just a quick disclaimer for those who are wondering, what does a head of digital know about the mining or geological industry? I was, in a previous life, a consultant geologist. And Vilna, where were you when I was a graduate? I think that was very well put in. Also, I might have still been practicing geology. Who knows? But thanks, and thanks for the opportunity. So let's start with a reality check. In many cases, when you apply for a job these days online, your CV doesn't necessarily go straight to the recruiter. It first meets possibly a bot. Whether you're applying through LinkedIn, Indeed, or company portal, there's a very high chance that your CV is being scanned by either an ATS or an AI recruitment system, which I'll get into detail shortly. These tools are basically gatekeepers deciding whether you move forward or get filtered out. So if we just break this down a little bit more, ATS stands for Applicant Tracking Systems, and they're like digital filing cabinets. They're used about more than 75% of large to mid-sized enterprises globally, and they don't just store your CV, they actually sort it, rank it, filter it based on specific criteria. Think of globally some great systems are Workday, SAP, SuccessFactors, or more locally PNet, Direct Hire, Job Crystal. These are all examples of ATS platforms in action. Then there's AI, and this is where things get a little bit more advanced. So AI-driven platforms go beyond just storing and filtering your data or your CVs. They actually try and understand your CV. So they assess things like your skills, your experience, how well you align with the job requirements, and even your behavior online. So for instance, LinkedIn uses AI to suggest jobs to you based upon your profile activity, keywords, searches, interactions, etc. So what does this mean for you? It means that your CV has to be both human-friendly as well as machine-friendly. If it's not structured properly or lacks relevant keywords, as Vilna mentioned, it may never reach the person who's actually making the hiring decision. It's well worth noting at this point, and Vilna did touch on it slightly, that AI can also assist in developing your CV. And I would highly recommend using generative AI to assist with just utilizing better language, better formatting of the CV, grammar checks, spelling checks, etc. Obviously, with caution, you obviously must remember that many, especially the free AI, generative AI systems, does utilize the data to retrain its bots. So obviously, your information in that case is widely shared. If we can move to the next slide, thanks.
Oh, sure, no problem.
So let's unpack how the systems actually read your CV. So imagine a robot scanning a document in under a second, because it really takes, a couple of seconds for it to do its thing, looking for very specific signals. It's fast, but not necessarily intuitive. So it relies heavily on structure and language. And I think those are two themes that came through, Vilna, from your narrative. So first is keyword matching. So algorithms scan your CV for exact terminology related to the job spec. So if the job spec mentions core sampling or ArcGIS, and those words aren't in your CV, you risk being filtered out, even if you may have that skill. So the takeaway, use the language of the job advert. Don't necessarily paraphrase or assume the system will infer meaning from what you're trying to say.
Yep.
Secondly, section recognition. The software is looking for clearly labeled sections: education, experience, skills, just like the example that was shown earlier. It's not going to dig into your CV creatively. It's scanning for standard headings and a predictable layout. Next is scoring and ranking. So most ATS and AI platforms assign a relevant score to your CV. This can be influenced by things like how often you use relevant keywords, how clear your layout is, how well your qualifications align with the job. So it's obviously important to make sure that that structure and format is there. And lastly, we get to machine learning enhancements. So this is where more sophisticated AI comes into play. It tries to understand context. For example, if you write lead field mapping teams, the AI might deduce leadership or technical skill, even if those exact words aren't present. Now, those are obviously very specific to AI-driven systems. The good news is AI is getting smarter. The bad news is if your CV isn't designed with both logic and clarity, even a smart system won't be able to help you. So what can you do to make your CV read properly and make it through those filtering systems? Firstly, design for machines, not just humans, as I mentioned. Most of us craft our CVs thinking only about the hiring manager, but you need to assume it's going to be assessed by a system first. So this means clean, simple formatting, also mentioned earlier. The unnecessary design elements, fancy or high-level design elements can confuse the system and can cause information to be skipped. So just be careful of that. Use clear standard headings. AI is looking for labels like work experience, not my journey, or professional, story. Try and be as literal as possible. It does help in certain instances. Stick to acceptable formats. Word documents are the safest. In many cases, or next to Word are PDFs if it's allowed. Some systems don't allow PDFs. Avoid fancy graphic designed CVs or formats, unless you're in a creative field. But even then, you might want to just have a plain text version as well for online applications. Maintain consistency of layout. So ensure, your text is left aligned as an example. Use 1 or 2 columns. Don't mix up font sizes or styling too much. A neat layout helps the systems assess your CV a bit better. And obviously, more than that, humans as well, right? Because often the hiring manager has to go through a series of, say, 10 CVs. And obviously, if they're failing formats, it does become too much. Let's talk about keywords a bit. This is obviously very strategic, and I want to mirror some elements that Vilna has mentioned. Try and mirror the job description. So if the job asks for someone who knows geological survey techniques, your CV shouldn't necessarily try and convey that by saying spatial mapping exercise. Those are not the same in the eyes of the algorithm. So try as much as possible to match that job description. Be careful not to just copy and paste phrases 20 times. So use natural language as much as possible. We want relevance, not necessarily repetition. And then use synonyms and variations. So systems are improving, but not all of them understand that interpreted data and analyzing data sets might mean the same thing. So rather cover your bases with all types of phrases. And then next slide. Thanks, Mona. I think just to wrap it up, just how to create a CV that's clear to a robot and obviously wins in terms of the recruiter. Firstly, proofread and edit. Errors can cost you both with bots as well as with humans. Spelling mistakes may throw you off. Keyword matching is important. Inconsistent fonts, odd formatting can ruin your layout. Always double check, triple check, like Vilna said. say is your CV or any any document. Is your spacing even? Are your headers the same size? Have you run a spell check? You could obviously use somebody else to just peruse your CV as well. Treat this document as your passport to the next stage, because it really, really is. Quantifiable achievement, show your value with numbers. So I think this is actually quite a good point. Don't just say improved project delivery as an example. Say, I reduced project delivery time by 15%. Numbers always give claims
Yes.
weighting. So they help both the bots as well as humans. Bots as well as humans quickly grasp just the impact of your experience. And
Come
then
on.
tailor,
Can I just
yes,
quickly there, when you say that, there's something else that I didn't mention. Sorry. I said I'm quite relaxed about all of this.
no,
And that is why when you are busy writing the CV and you think this is the word I'm going to use, go up, look up in the dictionary, look up phrasing. How do I do this better? And you will find, like, what you're saying now with your quantifiable achievements and your wording in that. Don't just stick with the first word you are thinking of in your head. Go back to basics, online dictionary, type synonym, another word to use, blah, 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 and compare that when you're busy writing. All right.
100%.
Sorry.
So no, thanks, Rana. And then lastly, tailor for each job. So the biggest tip is probably don't use a one size fits all CV as well, I mentioned. Every job spec is slightly different. Every organization is slightly different in what they're seeking. Tailor your CV to match specific keywords, reorder sections to highlight most relevant experience to that particular job specification, remove details that don't serve that specific purpose or your current role. And yeah, it takes more time, but it dramatically increases your chances of actually, getting in the door. The end goal here is twofold: to get past the system and stand out to the human. And that's how you win. So, Lana, should
Correct.
we add anything else?
No, Kamal, I think that last sentence you said is absolutely it. And like with everything in life, it's practice. You're going to write your CV once, go do it again, do it again, do it again until you have the right um, look and feel that you are happy with. And then, like we said here throughout this whole thing, adjust it to the job that you are applying for. And I cannot echo what Kamal has said more. It is a bot that is, in the good old days when I was a recruiter, like more than 20 years ago, it was us humans sitting there and reading every single page. Doesn't happen anymore. So you've got to up the ante a little bit in terms of working smarter and not harder. That's all from our side.
So I'm going to talk about acing your interview. So you've made it through the ATS filtering AI systems. Your CV was ranked amongst the top, and you have been contacted by by a recruiter, and you have now been invited to an interview. So how do you prepare yourself for that? Knowing that we are actually at the very beginning of using AI in our work, spaces, and some people have already started. I know we have as well in my line of work. So I thought let's theme it to this kind of like AI Afro futuristic theme. So I'm a millennial who's having a human experience. Just a little introduction about me. I built a career that was basically just me seizing opportunities that were handed to me. And this is because in my undergrad, I did it at Pretoria University. While I was there, I got interested in the arts because I wanted to do something on campus. And I'm not athletic, so the arts was what I would run to even in high school. So I joined the UP choir. They're actually quite well known now, and they're doing very well. This is many years ago. So this is like over 10 years ago, over 10, 15 years ago. And then I did my honors in psychology at UNISA. And that was because I had already started working my first job, and I needed to obviously develop my skills, because what I wanted to do at the time required advanced degrees. And I studied part-time, managed that with a social life, and being the only daughter, as you can imagine, that's a hectic schedule. And then I took an opportunity where I was awarded a full scholarship to go study at a graduate business school in Dublin, Ireland. And this was about 10 years ago. I had just turned 27 at the time. And I took this opportunity to go live in a country I've never known, don't have family there, don't have anyone there. And it was really my European experience. I've always dreamed of living overseas. I had traveled overseas up until this time, but living there was the first time. And I learned a lot about myself, self-reliance. I learned a lot about, building community, which is one of the things I'm deeply passionate about. So I spend some of my spare time actually contributing to community building projects like this one, particularly capacity building initiatives. And when I came back from Dublin, because I had fallen in love again with data and analytics and had worked a little bit at an innovation center, I started, I co-founded Women in Big Data, which was really an international global community that allowed us to build some of the capabilities and capacity building of young graduates in data and analytics. At the time, it was fairly new. When you spoke about data 10 years ago, people thought you were talking about MTN, Vodacom data. They didn't think you were talking about the things that get collected by digital platforms. And before that, I actually worked with Nolene through WIMSA, which is, again, a community initiative for women within the mining space, dedicated at capacity building women and making sure that, we build that leadership pipeline. And this is because, again, I'm a leadership recruiter, and I just felt that it would be actually a good idea to build, a network of professionals that could trust the work that I do, but also that I could trust to help me find and identify talent for the different clients that I worked for at the time. And with that, I got to speak at a lot of conferences. I do enjoy hiking. It's one of my passion pastimes. It's just, it just gives you a different feeling when you've reached the apex of that mountain. I'm still a work in progress. And I thought this would be like a fun kind of like representation of what I have on a daily basis that I'm using. I'm always connected, obviously, trying to manage my steps and my gut health and, working and all of those things. But just like this figurine, there is different parts of me that make up who I am. Storytelling within your interview, it's one of the things that I think will be a differentiator for other candidates that are interviewing. So you're able to differentiate yourself when you're able to storytell and package yourself as a professional, but also a human being, because companies are hiring human beings. And once you have been invited to an interview, the way you package yourself and the way you, answer the questions, it's not just the technical questions that are important. It's also the behavioral ones, because they're hiring human beings who are going to work with other human beings and maybe bots in future. But for now, it's human beings working together. So we're trying to see, as recruiters, your ability to see yourself as an individual, but also as part of a whole. Can you actually collaborate? Because a lot of the work that we're doing now is becoming more and more interdisciplinary. Are you able to perspective take? Are you the type of person who can manage their emotional intelligence? How do you develop that? Those are all the things that are going to make you stand out in a crowd of shortlisted candidates for a role. Okay, that whole spiel, I'm not going to repeat it. It's just the slide that I was talking through to say that the employer brand aspect of who you are as a candidate is becoming more and more important, or rather the professional brand is becoming more and more important, and a key differentiating factor for you as a candidate who's also interviewing amongst other candidates. So your ability to share a story, to work well with other people, to have a vision of where you're going is very important. So with that, I encourage you to own your story, because even the brands, or rather the companies that you want to work in, are really pouring a lot of investment in activating their cultures, their employee value proposition, which is shortly known as an EVP, and their wider employer brand. Usually when we're talking about brands, we're talking about the corporate brand, which is, the investor relations side, where all the investors come and understand the inner goings of the business and how they're making money and how they plan to actually make money, what other challenges they are faced with. But we're seeing from an HR perspective a shift in investment in employer brands, which means as an employer, how do you cater and take care of your people? What sort of culture enables innovation, and the ability of your employees to grow and build careers within your business? Obviously, people are no longer spending 15 years in one company. Millennials typically spend 3 to 4 years. Gen Z is even worse. It's about 2 years. So in that 2 years, when you have this professional, how are you building, helping them co-create their career, but also how are you helping them build capacity and capability? Because the people are going to be a key differentiator for businesses, even in the age of AI. So just a few kind of like definitions you can read on the screen, that culture relates to the personality of the business. The EVP, it's more of what benefits and rewards the employees that are working for a particular business are able to attain. How are they able to structure their career in terms of growth on a remunerated side, but also on technical capabilities and so forth. We're seeing this a lot with the very, very technical niche scarce skills, where developers will not want to go work for a particular company because they don't use certain languages in that particular company, or you will find that actuaries don't necessarily want to work for a specific insurer versus another. Because it has built a type of brand that allows you to grow your career. It really is about where you are as an individual and what you plan to do. So you need to own your story in understanding what it is you're good at. Back to the things they used to teach us in LO, your SWOT analysis. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What sort of opportunities can you gain? What are the threats, potential threats? This helps you also navigate what sort of skills you need to build on what you already have once you have that job, right? There's the soft skills side, which is why you're here, but also there's the technical aspects that interface and interlink with AI. So I did some research in preparation for this talk, and I found Julie Sherman. Her LinkedIn is at the bottom there, and she stated a couple of weeks ago the 5 top skills of working in geoscience. Why do you need to know this? You need to know this because it helps you also identify where you would potentially fall in if you were to get a role or an opportunity. It helps you also package your end goal and your aspiration, because that also forms part of your story of why you want to work for an Anglo-American or an Ivanhoe or a BP or a petrochemical company, right? It forms part of what sort of skills you are thinking you will be able to gain from working for that particular enterprise. So she stated that firstly, research gives you 99% good understanding of any data set. And because a large amount of companies now are investing in AI software, this becomes much more of just you collecting data from a field work, right? You need to be able to sell it. You need to be able to communicate your ideas and be able to explain the value and the impact of your data. She also says that analytics is no longer about just what you collect in terms of the numeracy and the numbers side. You need to be able to also formulate insights. Back to the story. What is the potential risk of not paying attention to this, I guess, what you found on your fieldwork exercise or what you found in your data research, right? What are some of the solutions can you bring forth so that management can make a decision? How do you influence decisions? Those are going to be some of the things that you need to be able to navigate, especially on the softer skill side once you get into corporate. So again, why do you need to know this? Because this also formulates part of the why you want to be a geoscientist or why you want to be whatever you have in your mind. I do want to also preface that your career is a marathon. Some of the changes that are happening now were changes that people who came into geoscience 30 years ago did not imagine would happen. However, other changes happened in their pathway. So you need to be able to also, in your decision making, be able to navigate and make decisions that are relevant for your ability to grow your career. So adaptability is a very important trait to have. It's actually now being quoted as a quotient. So we have the IQ, EQ, which is intelligent quotient, the emotional quotient, but the AQ is your adaptability quotient, your ability to actually try new things, to follow the trends, to accelerate innovation, to solve issues using technology, and actually collaborate with other people. So you've made it to the interview and they start to ask you questions. One of the very first things that I always tell my candidates is using the STAR method is a good way of ensuring that you don't ramble. And this goes for technical as well as behavioral questions. It prevents you from rambling because when you ramble, you start to say things that compromise your ability to succeed in that interview and make it to the next round. So you need to be able to state the scene of giving an example. It's always great to give an example of the things that you've done, either in the field or at school when you were, solving problems or projects. State the situation. What was the problem statement? What were you solving for? Define your role. Talk a one sentence. So each of these is actually one sentence. So it's 4 sentences that enable you to not ramble. Once you have stated the scene, you define the role that you have played in that particular project or problem-solving exercise. You explain what actions you took. If it was to collect data, you state how you did the data collection, and then you state the result of that particular project. What was the end result? Linking it to what were you solving for, to what you actually found. I find that when you are a candidate and you answer according to this method, it gives you also confidence in not only answering but also engaging with the interviewers. They also get to see that you are a precise person and organized, which is always a good thing to showcase when you're in an interview. So lastly, your number one thing that you need to do when you are in an interview is to be memorable. Remember, there's a lot of graduates that are gunning for the same role. How are you going to be that one memorable candidate? And I have a cheat code. Again, create a story of your journey and link it to where it is you want to end up. How do you plan to get there? And how do you see this company that you have applied for, this role, enabling you in getting there? Be clear, be confident, and listen to the question. Some people will interrupt an interviewer as they are finishing their question. It's always a bad idea to do that. Always listen to the question intently. Nod if you want to nod. If you're not sure and you want to buy time, just say, can you please give me a few minutes? Let me organize my thoughts. again, it's a good way of kind of like controlling the situation and remaining, firm in how you want to answer. Again, the STAR method in the back of your mind. You're well put together, you're presentable. You don't need to be heavily made up. As you know, in mining, makeup is actually just not a thing that you need to be concentrating on. Maybe if you work for financial services, but because you're in the field most of the time, you need to at least be well put together, clean clothes, ironed if you are wearing, dressable shirts and things like that. If you're a gent, make sure that your hair is prim and proper. It's not looking, scaly, or it's not looking dusty. There are people who tend to not take care of their hair. So just make sure you're presentable. And then lastly, show a potential to adapt. So how you answer the questions, try to always come up with how you adapted to the situation, because one thing's for sure, when you're trying to solve a problem for a particular problem statement, you don't necessarily anticipate or know what to expect that will go according to plan. So you also have to make examples of what the plan was and how you adapted to that plan to get to the end result. This is something that I hope will resonate with you all, and hopefully help you in preparing for interviews.
So good morning all. Today I'll be talking about emotional intelligence, as Nat mentioned, Sifiso Siwela from ERM. So this is just what I'll be talking about. So essentially, what is emotional intelligence? The difference between EQ and IQ, I'll elaborate on those shortly. The 5 elements of emotional intelligence, as some researchers have done work on. And then more importantly, emotional intelligence in the workplace, why it's important, and then leading up to why it's key for career development and your leadership acumen as well. And then I'll touch a bit on skills of the future. I know Naomi touched a bit on those. I'll bring another flavor as well. She looked at, I learned a new term, AQ, adaptability, which is also an important point, as you'll see, around EQ. And look, throughout the presentation, you'll see a lot of photos from, various projects I've been involved in, largely in the exploration, consulting, and various other environments within consulting, which I'll allude to, just to highlight some of the lessons I've learned and some of the traits that I've, have added to my, EQ somewhat, and me progressing into various leadership roles. I'm not the expert on EQ, but I'll just be bringing in my experiences and lessons learned. So hopefully you learn something out of it. All right. So what is emotional intelligence? So it's, there's various definitions which you can review at your leisure. There's various references I've included in here, but it's the ability to understand, use, manage emotions in oneself and others. All right. So the term was first unveiled by Peter Salovey and John Mayer, not that John Mayer, but a researcher one, not the musician. And according to Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, they developed the theory while painting a house. That specific quote is on the right there. But essentially, they articulated this theory that described a new kind of intelligence, which is the ability to recognize, understand, use, and regulate emotions effectively in everyday life. Now, I'll be using EI in the presentation going forward, but it's symbolized and quantified by the abbreviation EQ, which is the emotional quotient. All right, so, and more importantly for this presentation, EQ in the workplace is the ability to understand managing your own emotions and those of others, which then aids in stress relief, effective communication, empathy, conflict resolution within organizations, teamwork, fostering strong relationships, and a positive work environment for the benefit and the success of the team. All right, so the concept originates from Dr. Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. This is from the 80s, which suggests individuals have diverse intellectual capacities. Then the guy on the right there, that's Dr. Daniel Goleman, who's written quite a bit. He's a science journalist. He was a science journalist, sorry, at the New York Times, and he covered psychology, emotions, and the brain. And his book, Emotional Intelligence, which you'll see in the next few slides, has been translated into 40 languages globally and was celebrated by Time magazine as one of the top 25 most pivotal books in the realm of business management. Now, what he did, he emphasized two of Gardner's intellectual forms, which is interpersonal intelligence, that's detecting, responding to others' moods, motivations, and desires. And then the second is intrapersonal, which is being self-aware, attuned with one's own values and beliefs. Now, EI differs from rational intelligence in its focus. So rational intelligence involves facts and tight logical reasoning, while EI concerns how facts and reasoning are applied, right? So that's just basing on some of the earlier work from Gardner. So this led some to theorize that high IQ, quantified, as I said, by EQ, high EI, sorry, quantified by EQ, is more important in business than high rational intelligence, which is quantified by IQ, which a lot of you know, but I'll show the difference shortly. So both EI and rational intelligence should work together. And then without rationality, EI may become overly subjective. People can apply it in various forms without understanding it, which then hinders the objectives. But when these are used effectively, it's essential, for internal collaboration, excuse me, and partnerships. Right. Now, this is some of Daniel Goleman's work. I'm not going to go into the one on the left. You can read that at your leisure and find out a bit more, but he's done quite a lot of work, around EI. I'm just going to do work on the 5, elements, which are the ones on the right, the less complex one, all right? And yeah, you can also Google this at your leisure. But the first one, the key aspect is self-awareness, understanding your own emotions, your strengths, your weaknesses, values, and motivations. Therefore, you can make better judgments or make no judgments at all without all the facts, right? And then a person who's self-aware is usually better able to handle and learn from constructive criticism. The second one is self-regulation, managing your emotions, impulses, and adapting to changing situation. AQ, we've just learnt about from Naomi. Again, here, maintaining your equilibrium, you regulate your emotions and you express them with restraint and control. The third one is motivation, that's the drive and the urge, being driven to achieve goals, taking initiative, and persisting in the face of setbacks. So that's where the perseverance comes in. All right. So yeah, so EI not only affects the way you get along with others, but also how you succeed in your personal and professional life, right? Empathy is the next one. So recognizing and understanding the emotions of others and taking their perspectives into account. So this is the most important virtue, to sense how other people feel. So being empathetic. Social skills. So building and maintaining positive relationships. This has got to do with effective communication and resolving conflicts constructively. So such people who have these can build rapport and trust quickly with others in their teams, avoid power struggles, backstabbing, and they usually enjoy other people and have the respect of those around them. So those are the 5 key elements. All right, now the difference between EQ and IQ. So yeah, IQ is the standard score, shows how far above or below your peer group you are in your mental ability. So the peer group score is 100. So the number you get by how they test it is they test people all around socioeconomic status and then take the average. So again, it's the ratio of mental age to chronological age times 100. So for example, and this was coined, IQ was coined by William Stern, a psychologist in 1912. But just in terms of working it out, if someone's 10 years old and has the mental age of a 10-year-old, the IQ would be 100. If your mental age was, for example, 13 rather than 10, your IQ would be 130. All right. Now, EQ, on the other hand, as we said, refers to just emphasizing again a person's ability to perceive, control, evaluate, and express emotions. It shows again controlling your emotions in a positive way to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and more importantly, you diffuse conflict. So many people, they connect spirit with emotional insight. So academic intelligence doesn't have relation with emotions and feelings. So we've seen the most intelligent persons among us could drown into oceans of undisciplined impulses and unbridled passions. Okay, just a bit more on the differences and how they merge together. So previously, measures of success were to have high IQ. However, both IQ and EQ are necessary for performance and effective communication. I mean, just going back to the previous slide, we've all met people who are socially and interpersonally inept. And we know that, despite having a high IQ rating, success does not automatically follow. That's why you need the EQ. Emotions play a very critical role in the overall quality of our professional and personal lives, more critical than even the measure of brain intelligence. All right. And again, EQ takes precedence over IQ in our relationships and social life, So yeah, the ability to deal with one's feelings, understand the feelings of others in any situation helps you complement, the academic intelligence or the cognitive capabilities, which translate to IQ. So emotional insensitivity, lack of ability to understand and manage human emotions, as well as those we interact with, is a major weakness, in highly educated but narrowly focused specialists and professionals like geologists. That's the book I was referring to. And again, to emphasize again, so is your degree enough? So normal amount of technical expertise, and this is one of the lessons I've learned, I can compensate for a lack of emotional intelligence in a manager. So the qualities, emotional qualities, are essential for your success, regardless of qualifications. And, as workplaces evolve with new technologies that Kamal touched on, AI and others, emotional intelligence in hiring and management becomes crucial to understand the needs of today's workers. So Naomi also touched on that as well, and I'll elaborate a bit later just what interviewers need. So again, it's not our IQ, but our EQ plays a major role in decision making. So in order for you to flourish and, navigate difficult conversations and become rock stars, I added the rock there to that quote in the workplace. All right. Just again, illustrating now, because there's AI with the insert of that, what the differences are. Technology can't replace emotions. AI is more autonomous, and yes, it can process quite a lot, but it lacks that human touch, right? So while the tools and technology can help us learn and master information, nothing can replace our ability to learn, manage, and master our emotions and the emotions of those around us. But you can read up on that at your leisure. This is just another summary and the key differences between AI and EI. And, if you use these quite well, it can be quite powerful. So I just want to go in here. I mean, we've all seen what ChatGPT can do. You can process a 1,000-word essay on any subject in like 10 seconds, but its answers are like in black and white and doesn't consider context or feelings. So there are some things that, AI cannot replace or simply do. So as much as machines can process a lot of information, you can't have that compassion, understanding, or the creativity. So you can't have also meaningful connections with people. And this is the danger now with, AI and technology. People can get disconnected, which can be catastrophic for companies, without that human interaction. All right, quickly, why EI in the workplace? There's 4 main reasons. EI competencies are critical for success in most jobs. It's linked to higher job satisfactions, and for those with, high EI EQ. Many adults, we work in the workforce without competencies. Hence, we're having days like this and these events. So that's why it's key to have that. And then there's various initiatives that companies do around training. And again, to emphasize, you spend a lot of your time at work. So it is important in the workplace, and again, it's linked to job satisfaction. Employees react with negative emotions, job outlook, and, the morale may suffer. So which in turn affects performance, as I've said earlier on. Right. These are just some of the benefits, but the main thing is, people with high IQ are better at working with others, building trust, fostering a positive team dynamic, which therefore increases team performance, better decision making. And again, the leadership as well. And there has been research, but don't quote me on that yeah, people with high EI and, average higher than those who don't, to score low. There's figures that have been put out, but I haven't verified those, so I'm not going to quote those. But again, there's other benefits to that: reduce staff turnover, decrease operational stress. People can get burnt out, and you want to make sure a team can function at its best. All right. The importance again, so people who are at high levels, they require within the hierarchy, require more EI than those at lower levels. EI is twice as important as analytical and technical skills. Naomi mentioned something to that effect as well. And it's a very potent weapon. And an organization which, has emotionally intelligent people and just generally focuses on EI is more productive, motivated, and then employees are happy. That adds to that too. All right. Okay, just some examples of emotional intelligence in the workplace, right? So, improve listening skills. So, listen more and talk less. Don't interrupt people in meetings. Now, I was talking, when you are being interviewed, also, within team meetings and so forth. You must provide considerate, constructive feedback and, show compassion where it's required. Have open and honest comms. You must welcome the honest feedback from all personnel, the constructive criticism, and provide a platform where people can submit feedback without fear. All right. And people can speak up easily. Be able to adapt with change. I just added the AQ1 I learned from Naomi now. Being able to adapt. Now, I've worked for companies where, for example, they've been acquired by other companies. I have the same at Deloitte and currently at ERM, where the precursor would have been a technical consulting company where things are done differently. But you must see that as an opportunity. Be flexible, right? Some people do not adapt to change and don't take it easily, but you must look within the opportunities of that. So it's something I have first-hand experience in, being able to adapt, and that also teaches you different ways of doing things. Right, and finding the positive aspects, in challenging situations. It's opportunity for growth. Okay, workplaces, they need to foster creativity and out-of-the-box thinking. And then again, in introducing stress relief into your day, help build relationships with other people and have better compassion, as we've mentioned. All right, so how to improve it? Identify your own weaknesses, for example, you might be great at helping people who verbally tell you how they're feeling, but you might not be as efficient at recognizing nonverbal comms. And then also review your emotional intelligence history. Look at whether you responded to someone, you could have responded to someone more empathetically. Reflect on your communication. That allows you to understand how to handle similar situations better in future. Receive feedback, and also ask family members as well or friends to tell you how well you communicate with people, and use this advice to understand how others might perceive you and what you can do for a more positive change. So, and then ask for help as well, see if there's suggest some workplace activity that could benefit the entire team, so there's always people willing to help. And then practice it daily. Practice. Vilna mentioned that, but also EI, you practice that daily, So look at yourself in the mirror to assess your body language, facial expressions, and communicate with people as well. Practice it, make sure you pin it. All right. Team building, that's quite key. Team performance, as I mentioned in organizations, relies on EI. And yeah, your team members should connect before starting work, identify or address any negative behavior which might impact the rest of the day. And again, opinions of the team, they're quite key, support and commend contributions, and focus on problem solving, not shifting blame. All right. And this is now, EI and career growth, not growing like the Hulk, but this is quite key and relevant because you're managing your emotions and understanding what makes you angry and grow into this monster like the Hulk is important, So the self-awareness again, self-control, empathy, social skills, those are the key elements discussed earlier. So this helps you better understand others' needs if you understand yourself well. And what's key is employers assess employees' EI to identify leadership potential. And this influences, decisions on promotions and pay increases. So the SWOT is quite key. Know what your weaknesses are and your strengths, and what the opportunities are from those. So those could, turn into opportunities, but also understand your threats, understand yourself. So, excuse me. So people, with high EI can take feedback more easily and use it to grow and improve as a person, right? Now, this is again in hiring. Actually, Vilna interviewed me for my first job at MSA back in those years. One of the things they emphasize, and Naomi also touched on this when she spoke about storytelling, they're looking at the human beings, the package, the behavior. They'll ask you about very difficult situations, how you felt, how you resolved those. So that's becoming more important rather than your technical expertise. So the best way to determine someone's EQ level during the hiring process is to ask interview questions that put them in stressful situations, which can draw out emotional responses. This way, you can understand how, you responded to pressure. They can understand conflict and difficult emotions in the past. So these are things that have been looked at more and more. Again, as geologists, we are exposed to, extreme environments and pressure, So we need to build that grit, resilience. I'll talk a bit more about grit shortly. And there's the whole global economy, like a few of the speakers said as well. So the way you have to collaborate, negotiate, got to negotiate with artisanal miners, for example. And these are the sort of skills that build your leadership, build character, and then differentiate you from your peers. All right. And again, don't forget, another thing is the cultural intelligence as well, wherever you go. I've spent quite a lot of time in Saudi. I spent time in Afghanistan as well. That's the Batumo's photos. Yeah, this is just pictures again. We leading from the front lines. This is where it's all starts. You are literally down in the trenches, in the mud. You are out there in the camps, interacting with people. And having that sense of humor to make sure you get things done. All right. And again, leadership. This quote I took from an ex-colleague of mine, Timbilu, who does a lot of work in human capital. In chaos, look for the calmest person in the room. That is your leader. So the one, whose presence brings order to disorder. The one who steadies the room when everything feels uncertain. That's the one. In chaos, the real leader isn't the loudest. It's the calmest. And leadership isn't noise, it's composure. It's not control over others, it's mastery over self. So the world doesn't need noise. We've already got enough of that. It needs more steady hands and calm minds. So knowing your emotions and how you react to those can help you with impulse control, allow you to make more constructive decisions under pressure. A good leader can create the type of environment where each person feels relevant and motivated. An emotionally intelligent leader clearly understands the various situations that take place within an organization and anticipates the likely emotional outcome of each. But let me pause on this because there's a quote I like using as well, that if you can keep your head in the midst of all this confusion, then you don't understand the situation. So don't mistake the quietness of a leader, sometimes it's just someone doesn't understand the situation. But as a leader and with high EI, you are understanding the situation. So it doesn't necessarily mean calm or quiet. It's leadership. Sometimes not understanding the situation, but leaders would understand the situation. So leaders with high EI effectively manage impulses. So I got 2-3 minutes to go. And what you pursue as a leader is the win-win solutions during conflicts, right? You try and find people's strengths and where you can meet halfway, all right? Okay, this again is just the end part of it. This is 10 skills for the future workforce. This is Future of Jobs report by the World Economic Forum. A few things they highlight relate to emotional intelligence. You can read this at your leisure. The link is there, but that's the focus, you know. Naomi spoke also from a survey, the top 5 skills for geoscientists, for example. Now, what's key to highlight, they look at it globally, and you'll see on the left there, some of the skills is not, you know, technically oriented. It's about resilience, stress, flexibility, adaptability, as we've said, you know, and creativity, leadership, and social influence. Then they zoom into South Africa, to show the top 10 there. You can read those at your leisure. But what this survey projected is that EI will be one of the top skills needed in business in 2025. This was 2020, so it's relevant now. And then again, reskilling, 50% of all employees would need reskilling by 2025. That's what it had said. Now, bringing it back to the future, I did a GeoSkills similar for GSSA in 2020. And at that time, I highlighted the 5 skills of the future. So I took this essentially from that presentation. But what it highlights again is developing your soft skills is quite key, and especially for millennials. You know, Naomi was mentioning for millennials in her one for geoscientists, you know, and then for getting IQ, you know, measure success in failure and growth. And again, the last number 5, being a good human, was key to that. So one thing you need to make sure is, making your future resilient by understanding this. So, you know, many organizations and society in general is moving away from the traditional measures of intelligence like IQ to predict success. They're no longer accepted as the sole forecasters for long-term professional achievement. And instead, great resilience are gaining the spotlight as predictors of success. And that's the definition of grit. Again, unrelenting focus, self-confidence, you know, resilience, motivation to succeed. Speaking of EQ, that picture on the right was after a big earthquake in 2016. People must have heard about that, originated from the Hindu Kush Mountains. I was there on the 3rd floor of a building at the time when that happened in Afghanistan. And again, it just speaks to the resilience. Be tough, you know, don't be shaken. So that's the other EQ. All right. And closing remarks, you know, EI is a critical skill for success in today's workplace. It's not just about being smart, but also being emotionally aware and capable of managing yourself and interacting effectively with others. I thank you.
Thank you. My name is Nosipho. I'm a geologist, graduated from the University of Pretoria, and I currently work in tech. I started my career in exploration, moved over to operations and consulting, and then tech recently. So I don't have a presentation to share. I'll just be talking about my experience with interviews, and then I'll take any questions from the floor. I think most of the speakers this morning touched on a lot of the stuff that I wanted to share with everyone this morning. So firstly, preparation is key, right? So as part of preparing for my interviews, I go to the company's website, understand the job specification, go to the company's website, but I also read news articles, because that gives me a great insight into, you know, the direction the company is going towards, or if they're facing any challenges or anything like that. Something that would generally not be on their website. but also LinkedIn. I rely on LinkedIn a lot. There's some great insights that you can get from LinkedIn. If you're looking at things like, is the company growing? You know, how many people have they onboarded recently? So things like that. My cheat code are referrals. Referrals have worked great for me. If you know somebody in that organization that, you know, can refer you for that specific role that you're interested in, that is a great way to actually land an interview. So usually I also check on LinkedIn if I know anybody that works for that organization, and I'll reach out and ask if they'll refer me for that particular position. But also, most companies actually incentivize their employees nowadays for referring a candidate. So if that candidate gets placed for that role, then you'll get, you know, some monies for that as well. So referrals are a really great way to get an interview. Then preparation, as I've mentioned earlier, but also I look at, because nowadays I've realized most of the time companies don't share like the salary for the role that, you know, they're offering. So it's important then for me to do a little bit of research as well, to find out, you know, look at recruiting companies and look for similar roles and do a little bit of research in terms of, you know, what to expect in terms of salary expectations. And I think, you know, most people, especially if you're starting your career, that conversation tend to be a little bit difficult, but I think it shouldn't be, right? I think if you know the value that you bring to the table, and are able to sell yourself really well, then it should be an easier conversation to have. But also, I always, you know, when that question comes up, I always give a range, right? So it's not a specific number that I provide, but I'll just give a range in terms of what I'm expecting salary-wise. And also, I think when you get in front of the team that's interviewing you, I think it's important to be authentic. It's important to be yourself. Tell your story. I think one of the speakers this morning mentioned that you should be able to tell your own story and sell yourself very well. So focus on, well, what I try and do is focus on my strengths and the value that I bring, and quantifying, you know, some of my achievements from my previous roles and experiences. But also I use the STAR approach. I think it was one of the previous Naomi mentioned the STAR approach when answering questions, because that helps you have clarity when you respond to the questions. I also find that, you know, nowadays the specs for job openings are quite lengthy, and, you know, there's a lot of requirements, and often I don't meet some of the requirements, but I don't let that deter me for applying for that specific role, because I also think about experiences that I've had in my previous roles where I've acquired skills that, you know, are transferable, right? So so I look at it, can either be hard or soft skills that I can then use or transfer and be able to do the job well. So I also look, so things like communication, leadership. I think some of the previous speakers have highlighted some of those as well. Problem solving, teamwork, analytical skills. As geologists, you know, we work with data, whether it's exploration data, and, you know, you are managing a database, or resource modeling and estimation. So those are some of the skills that, you know, can be transferable. So I also look into that. I've also found that, you know, when you are called for an interview, likely go through on average, maybe 2 rounds of interviews. So the initial round will likely be with the recruiter, whether it's a recruiter from the company itself or an external recruiter who will then try and assess if you are a good fit. I think understanding the organization that you're applying to in terms of their culture also gives you an added advantage, because you can, also assess if you'd be a good culture fit. And I think for me, I take interviews as a conversation, right? So it's not just about me trying to sell myself and my skills to the company, but it's a good way to also learn more about the company, their culture, and see if it's somebody that you also would like to work for.
My name is Natalie. I've worked in a number of teams across the industry, starting in academics with my master's degree and then through to exploration, and in a few mines, and now the mining software industry. So I've had a good experience with a number of different teams, and just here to share some insights. So many of us as geologists, or we as young students, choose geology or geosciences in the hope that we only need to talk to rocks for the rest of our careers. Unfortunately, as our careers progress, it is definitely evident that all aspects of success are leading with a lot of teamwork. So there's no more high school days of that guy who doesn't contribute and sits in the back and gets the group mark, So again, speaking about the CVs this morning, you've now put team player on your CV, but what does that actually mean? So if you're putting team player on your CV, that means you need to be able to collaborate across many different disciplines within the geosciences, from field geos to modelers to drilling crews. You need to know that data collection is teamwork. You've got one guy sieving your soil sample while you're working the GPS. You are able to solve problems in real time. There's no room for error in a lot of situations in our industry. And you can communicate clearly, again, across multidisciplines, time zones, all of these nice challenges. You have to be able to make these decisions quickly and communicate them clearly. And as always, we have to bring this in, again, working in a number of different environments. Safety is a massive thing to a lot of mining companies as well, all mining companies. So teamwork in this instance, if you stay safe, you keep others safe, and you watch each other's backs. So if you are putting team player on your CV, just know that you are expected to be able to do a lot of these things. Just as a bit of an outline, we're going to have a look at teamwork. Why does it matter? Understanding a few different personality types, some common challenges, communication and respecting work styles, conflict resolution and empathy, and essentially the bottom line. So the importance of teamwork in technical disciplines like geoscience is multifaceted. We know this. Geoscience is inherently collaborative, involving the integration of diverse thinking and perspectives to solve a number of problems, complex problems, critical thinking. So effective teamwork enhances both the quality of technical outcomes as well as the functioning of professional environments. We know, I mentioned now, multidisciplinary. We've got geologists, geophysicists, geochemists, data scientists, hydrogeologists, and we can't forget the mining engineers. So we've got a big group already that are working within their smaller teams, but then also part of a bigger team in larger corporations. So collaboration helps avoid mistakes, enriches our understanding, and opens opportunities. We spoke a bit now about networking and things like that. Teamwork, the better you do within a team situation, the more likely you are to be recognized for career growth. So if your teamwork can sometimes look a little bit like this, herding cats, whether it be large teams on a mine, in the field, as well as academia. So no matter the setting, the challenge is the same, keeping the cats moving in the same direction towards your common goal, even when their ideas and energy are all in different directions. We have a number of different a commonly used framework these days to understand different personality types within a team. Obviously, these can be mixed, but a lot of people within a team generally fall under these different categories. So we've got the thinker, the doer, the communicator, the strategist, and the nurturer. While I discuss these a little bit, think about where you may fit in within a team. I'll add some more here. So the thinker, these are often our very highly technical guys these are especially the ones that would prefer to only deal with the rocks. So these guys are very analytical, very technical. They like to put the soft skills in the back of the mind. But that's why we have the rest of the team together. So the action-oriented types, like the doer, these are the people that get things done, but they often do it, they want results and they want them now. So there's a lot of urgency from their end. They want to do it quickly and efficiently, but again, you have to work with the team, with the rest of the team members. So our communicator keeps alignment, communication. A lot of you on the call will already know that communication within teams, and again, I mentioned time zones, can be a massive challenge for working effectively, but the communicator, the person that's good with communication, is always very much appreciated. So work on your communication skills, writing, speaking, just in general, and that would put you ahead with communication. So we also have the strategist, who is the planner, usually focusing on the big picture. And so this person can sometimes get lost or miss little small details because they are focusing on the greater scheme of things. So again, this person will rely heavily on other members of the team to address those smaller issues. And then we have the nurturers. These are often informal team supporters or mentors also. So they sense emotional undercurrents within the team and just help maintain the morale. So often in this case also, they can downplay conflict just to keep the peace. The nurturer, in some of my cases in teams, is the guy that buys the beer just so that we can all sit down and have a discussion about it. So yeah, just something to keep in mind while you are going through your teams. I'm actually going to pause here just as sorry, I'm just trying to find my screen again, my other one, which has disappeared. I would like to see just a quick poll. Sorry, I don't have an official poll. I would just like to see a show of hands. I'm going to run through them quickly to see how many people, where you classify yourself in this situation. So can I have a show of hands on who thinks they're more of the thinker type? Okay, we've got a few. Yes, some of these people I recognize also. Definitely the thinkers. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. All right, let's move over to the doers, the ones that get things done no matter what. Okay, quite a few doers we've got going here. If you have raised your hand previously, you can take it down. Otherwise, we're getting our skewed results. Okay, bunch of doers. All right, who feels that they are the communicator within a team situation? Again, you can be both. Always good to be multifaceted here. Okay, some communicators in the room. Thanks very much. All right, then we'll move on to the strategists. The big picture, the big dreams. We forget to pack a toothbrush, but we still plan the holiday. Quite a few big thinkers. It's great to see the big picture. We obviously, these people aren't very much necessary, but you've got to have someone that is able to pick up the little things. All right, and who sees themselves as nurturers? Team morale, you guys are buying the beers, looking after people's feelings. A lot of nurturers in the room. Okay, that's good. I like it. Very, very important. And again, the nurturers generally tend to come with more, I want to say, inherent soft skills, just in terms of Sifiso mentioned empathy and things like that. They feed off people's energy and can see when the team is not doing so well. All right. So thanks for that little poll. I should have actually created a poll, but I did not. So thank you for sharing. Right. Then we can move on to some of the common challenges we see within teams. Again, these not necessarily massive teams. A team is essentially more than one person. So this can be applied to, again, academia, fieldwork, on the mines, in a lab, and all of the above. So our first challenge is obviously our diverse backgrounds and specializations. Again, we've got geologists, geophysicists, GIS specialists, engineers, data analysts. So they all use who all use certain jargon, and their focus areas are different. So early on in a project, it's good to foster interdisciplinary understanding through some knowledge sharing sessions, for example, as you set up a project or start working with a team. It's easier to use visual tools. Again, us in the geosciences, we are very visual people. I know as I say this, I've given you a slide to look at of text, but you get the gist. And then encourage mutual respect for each discipline's contribution. So each part of the puzzle within your team is crucial for the success of the work that needs to get done. So I'll say it again, geologists and mining engineers tend to butt heads, but their roles are equally as important within the common goal. So we also have the field and office disconnect. I have felt this many times in the field. You essentially establish your own little office on site, and those are the people you're working with on a daily basis, probably living with them also. So you're living where you're working, and you don't have the same interaction with head office as you would normally. So communication is very difficult. It can be very difficult, especially with different time zones. So the solutions here are to establish clear reporting channels, expectations, and roles. Very, very important. I know there are a few people I already know on the call also who have experienced this along with me. The definition of your role as a geologist or geophysicist on that project. Who are you reporting to? What are your deliverables? Clear goals. So also good to include field staff in planning meetings or post fieldwork reviews. So you have a debrief after the project, and the office personnel and the field team are able to be on the same page. So, and then also using collaborative software to keep real-time updates accessible to all. Our next challenge is time constraints and deadlines. We know in the mining industry, everything needed to be done yesterday. So this comes in again with the planning of the project. It's very difficult. We know the plan is never the actual plan. So it's a challenge in and of itself. So some of the solutions here are to use project management tools to track tasks. Again, without micromanagement, we'll put it that way. So encourage realistic planning. So we are always optimistic in how quickly something's going to get done, but inevitably a rig is going to break down or someone will be ill, which takes time out of that. So those contingencies need to be taken into account. And then also we promote team check-ins to reassess workloads and see how everyone's doing. This is kind of what we did with a team in Australia. In Argentina, which obviously the time zone was a massive difference, and it was very difficult to actually communicate with the team just to check in and know that they're actually safe. So we had to manage some expectations, and just make sure that everyone was still alive, still doing what they needed to be doing, and not feeling isolated. I think that's a big one. If the team feels isolated, they will act in isolation. So that goes on to our remote collaboration across locations. So that's why I say very important to schedule overlapping time windows for team calls. It's not always possible, but we make sacrifices when we need to. And then also useful to use asynchronous updates. In other words, recorded video briefs or check-ins, digital whiteboards and things like that, just to make sure, again, you'll know that your team is alive and well. And yeah, all good. So this is a big one. The last one is a big one in academia, but I have seen it in the industry as well. Disagreement on interpretation or methods. So we do, again, when everyone is specializing in a particular thing, there are egos that are involved with those also. So that's another thing to manage, but we will get there. So if there's a disagreement, we need to embrace structured peer reviews of models and interpretations. If there's a disagreement, we just need to, I mean, everyone has their own say, and then we move on from there and see if we can come to an agreement. Obviously, data is very interpretive. Sorry, words. So especially in geology, it can be very subjective, depending on which way you would like the answer to go. So again, also version control needs to be maintained in your modeling and mapping. So there are very good tools out there. I won't promote at the moment what Micromine has to offer. That's a conversation for a different day. But we have there are a number of cloud-based systems now where you are able to have version control on all your block models and mapping inputs and outputs, and you can see exactly who changed what when, which is fantastic. And then at the last point there, we encourage respectful debates and data-driven resolution. So we need to all look at what the data is telling us and agree. So we can't, make something up entirely, but we, as a team, you will all come together as a and find your own interpretation as a team. Got there. All right. So communication and respecting working styles. So again, as a few of these things were mentioned by Sifiso a little bit earlier. So it's very good to tailor your communication for certain personalities. So again, the personalities that we spoke about earlier, the doer, as an example, they want to get things done now. They don't have time to sit in a 2-hour meeting to have a meeting about a meeting. Get to the point. Things need to get done. They get to the point. I once had a manager who said to me off the bat when I started, she said, don't get offended if I'm short in my emails to you. I just don't have time for waffle. So be honest, be upfront, say, listen, because, we all like the hope this email finds you well, and then you want to smash your computer. But if you are communicating within a team and your team knows you and how you communicate, they will communicate with you as you prefer. So again, for cautious or sensitive team members, show patience and provide some context. So this isn't, to say that some people are softer than others. It's just the way people like to be communicated with. We can also use both verbal check-ins as well as visual aids for clarity. This especially comes along with multicultural or multilingual teams across different countries or things like that. Something visual, again, geologists are very visual. You're able to see, and that's a great way of communicating. It's kind of like maths. Maths is the same in any language, although I hate it in all languages, but that's besides the point. So again, we want to avoid jargon, and each time we are communicating, if there is if it's something very, very important, just make sure that you confirm understanding. So just ask them for a response. If this is a written communication, for example, just ask them to confirm that they understand what you are trying to get across. So in terms of diverse working styles, we know now, especially going through, I'm a bit tired of bringing COVID up, but especially since COVID, we have realized that a lot of people can work very much independently or together as a team remotely or together in the office. And we can have that flexibility with each other. It's a bit more difficult when you're on site, but working within a team in an office environment, it's easy to be more flexible. So some teammates prefer structured plans while others thrive in flexibility. Example, when we had to work from home day in, day out, did not like that. It was too much for me. You can't separate the work from life. So I liked the flexibility that we have, that a lot of us have currently adopted. Balance solo analytical work with group discussions. So again, we bring the analytical thinkers into it. They're highly working on the maths, but then having group discussions with them so that the rest of the team can understand the intricacies behind what they're actually working on. And then we come back to introverted team members. You know, if we, again, geologists like to talk to rocks. They're not often not the social type, but you know, we have them, the introverted team members. Let them know in advance if they need to prepare something for a meeting like these group discussions. Avoid putting people on the spot, especially if you haven't been working together for a while. But that's just a bit of, in my experience, that's what works quite well. All right, then we can move on. Conflict resolution. I've got a guy strangling another guy there. I think everyone here has wanted to do that at a point, or if you haven't, you will when you get there. But conflict is natural in this industry. So we've got long hours, tough conditions, and different priorities within the team. So again, do we do it safely or do we do it quickly? So these things can create tension within a team, definitely. But we need to resolve this conflict by addressing these issues early on. You can't sit and let them grow. Otherwise, they will get out of hand and grow into a much bigger problem that doesn't need to be. Often these things start off very small, and then you kind of generate you generate resentment towards that person if you are not addressing your conflict early on. So focus on the problem, not the solution, not on the person as an example. Frame it in a way, you know, is the core log late or is the process unclear? So don't blame the person. Bring it up as a reframe in that something's not happening. Why is that not happening? But it's not their fault. We don't want to use that kind of language. So yeah, again, use neutral, factual language. So as an example, the sample wasn't labeled is better than you saying you messed it up, just as an example. So these things happen quite often. Again, long hours, everyone's tired, you mislabel a sample, don't blame the person, address the issue and get back to it. So then bring it back to the mission. So let's figure it out together so that we can stay on target and hit down our meters or our sampling. So then, yes, again, we don't want to strangle the guy. We want to talk about it and move forward. I'll touch a little bit briefly on empathy. I know Safisal went quite into depth with it. So empathy does matter. So we need to understand others' technical constraints. For example, one person is really good at geostatistics, but another person is really good at data management. They're not the same, but they are still equally important to the success of the project. So again, empathy is not about being soft. It's about being smart. So we need to understand everyone's different roles and pressures. So someone within a team might be working on multiple different projects at the same time. We need to respect that and coordinate carefully, as well as, you know, we like to say, try and leave your personal life at home, but oftentimes that comes into the workplace with you. And then building trust through listening. I think Safisal mentioned this also. If not, I wasn't listening correctly. Listen, don't blame. So again, come back to conflict resolution. We're going to listen to each other and then move forward from there. People speak up more when they feel heard and not judged. So again, better empathy leads to better collaboration. And then essentially we come to the bottom line. The bottom line is that we should be leveraging each team member's strengths to reach our common goals. especially in geosciences in general. Our teams are not just about rocks and data and drilling and geophysics. They're about shared laughs, inside jokes in the field, a beer, and celebrating all the wins, no matter how big or small. You know, you've reached your sampling target for the day. That's a win that deserves to be celebrated. Again, comes to a little humor keeps the morale high and the stress low, and makes even the windiest or rainiest or muddiest of days more enjoyable. All right. I think I will leave you with this quote from Henry Ford. Coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, and staying together is success. So that's just my take on teamwork, and thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm Donna, and I'm from Online Counselor, where we focus on maybe online counseling and just focusing on building yourself and also doing some workshops.
I'm Galit. I'm a statutory social worker from Kids Buzz, but I'm also a bit of a multi-hustler. But I mainly focus on therapy and making sure children have good connections with their parents. So today we're going to be looking at confidence, not as something that you either have or don't, but as something that, like rock strata, builds layer by layer through action, mindset, and maybe a bit of strategic bluffing.
All right, so just to get started, what we'd like to do is you can either raise your hand or write in the chat. What is the first thing that you think of when it comes to confidence? Yeah, you can go from there.
Also, I have to give a disclaimer. As you can see, neither of us are, someone said, speaking up. Belief is self-based on evidence of keeping the promises you make to yourself. That's really good. Represent yourself.
Ability to admit when you're wrong. You don't know where you are maybe wrong.
Great. Being bold even when you're scared. Definitely. Fake it till you make it.
Believing in yourself and your abilities, being able to act boldly,
being articulate.
All right, love these. Okay, so just to jump into it. So, defining confidence. Remember, confidence does not equal perfection. Confidence is about trusting your ability to handle any challenges that may come your way. It doesn't mean that you have all the answers, but you have the foundation to figure it out. And also just another point. Remember that confidence isn't only seen in extroverts. Introverts also have that confidence. But naturally, when we do see extroverts, they come across as louder and more confident. But introverts also have that confidence. And that's something to remember.
Okay. So just a little bit of science behind confidence. It's tied to neural plasticity. So your brain literally rewires itself based on repeated experience. So the more we step out of our comfort zone and succeed, the more our brain learns that we can do that. So it's a nice little cycle. So I just wanted to touch a bit on imposter syndrome. I think it's something that every professional experiences at one point or another. So it's a persistent feeling of self-doubt and fear of being exposed as a fraud despite evidence of your skills and achievements. It's kind of feeling like they're going to realize that I'm just hammering away and hoping for the best. Up to 70% of professionals experience it, especially high achievers being put in new situations. And it's very common with newly grads in the field and early career professionals presenting research. And it shows up as over-preparing when it's not necessary, not speaking up when you should, maybe to say, hey, I actually have this really awesome idea, but you feel like everyone's going to laugh at you, or dismissing your own successes. And then that, in contrast, confidence is believing that you're capable, even when you don't have all the answers, versus imposter syndrome, which wants to believe you're not capable, even though you have all of the evidence that you are. Okay, so we have 3 confidence building blocks. So we want to just build a little bit of a foundation for it. So the first one is self-awareness, which starts with knowing your strengths, your values, and what energizes you. It's an internal compass that keeps you grounded when imposter syndrome creeps in and tells you you don't know what you're doing. So it's good to ask yourself a few questions to touch base with your own self-awareness, like, what am I naturally good at? What do I value in others? What do I value in myself? What gives me energy when I'm at work? And what do others often thank you for? You know, that's something to be proud of in yourself. So I wanted to do a little activity with you guys where you can write down 3 things that you're proud of or that you're good at. Doesn't have to be professional. It can be professional. I know the previous speaker talked about teamwork, maybe like something that you're good at when you're working in a team. Maybe you're proud of being the doer or the strategist. And just while you're writing that down, confidence doesn't mean that you're pretending to be something that you're not. It means you're starting from a solid understanding of who you are. So I think it's very important, like when you're putting your CV out there or you're trying to get a new role, I think it's important to remember that you can stand up for yourself and say, I think if we're starting this project, I'm really good at strategizing, or I'm really good at communicating with other people, so I can send the emails out and be the liaison between everybody. And if you're confident, you can put your hand up and you can say, I can do those things, and you're going to advance your whole team in the long run. So I saw someone said, oh, not yet. Okay.
So if you've got any things that maybe you want to share with us, that maybe something you're proud of, whether it's in your personal life, in business, what are you proud of? What makes you you in your business? What are you confident in?
Someone said they're a good ice skater. They're proud of becoming a candidate scientist this year. Well done. That's amazing. And proud of publishing your first paper as a first author. That's amazing. Congratulations. That's an amazing achievement.
Really exciting. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
I think in spaces like this, it's difficult to sometimes share because we don't know who's behind the screen sometimes. And we maybe don't really want to share because we're like not sure what people are going to think. But yeah, it's brave of you to share. It's confidence of you to actually share. So thank you. And moving into our next building block, and that is positive self-talk. So when we're looking at our positive self-talk and our inner critic, we are often our biggest critic for ourselves. And the way we speak to ourselves matters, and how we speak to ourselves. So basically what we want to try and do is we want to shape our thoughts to shape our confidence. But how do we do this? Okay. We can do this by going from a fixed mindset into a growth mindset. A fixed mindset is often quite limiting. It's quite negative. And it's not the best mindset that we actually want to have for ourselves. The ideal mindset that we want to have for ourselves is that growth mindset. It gives us more opportunities. It's a little bit more positive. So, for example, how do we do this? Basically, what we do is we replace I am not good enough with I am learning and growing. Something like also in the geosciences world, I am not good at field mapping. I will always struggle with it. Highlighting the word will, I will always struggle with it. That's quite negative. To shifting that into I'm still learning how to map accurately. Each trip helps me to improve. So actually being willing to grow and learn and having a little bit more positive mindset. When we're looking at having a growth mindset, it also means that we have to remember that there is going to be a struggle as we learn, as we're going on. We have to value the effort that we put into that. And we also need to remember how to reflect, such as asking ourselves, what did we learn from this? Where can we improve? What are the areas that we need improving? It's reframing our thinking, using more of a positive self-talk. Maybe, yes, we didn't do that well the first time. Actually giving ourselves that grace, sitting down and reflecting, where can I improve? What can I do differently next time? basically think about it, that your neurons are firing, like we spoke about at the beginning in terms of the science behind it. The more you think of something, the more stronger those pathways connect. Reframe and redirect your wiring. Thus, the more positively we think about something, especially about ourselves, the more confident we're becoming in it.
Okay. And then the third building block is to take action. And remember that small wins matter. So you don't become confident by waiting to do something. I heard a really good metaphor that said the water doesn't get warmer the longer you wait to jump in. And I think we've all had that where we're facing a cold pool and you go, okay, just 5 more seconds. It doesn't get warmer. So you become more confident by doing. Small actions lead to small wins, and small wins stack to real belief. So there's a little rejection challenge that we can do. If you want to participate, that will be great, but if you don't, that's also fine. So it's to do one bold thing every day, even if it scares you. Remember that confidence is like erosion shaping a landscape. Daily and repeated actions carve into real change. And each small success gives your brain a dopamine hit, motivating you to repeat an action.
So maybe what are some rejection challenges that you can think of? I think let's start there. Maybe if you're nervous to speak to somebody that you've never met before, maybe challenging yourself tomorrow to go up to a person in spa and tell them their outfit looks great, as an example.
I see some people answered from the first challenge. Someone said that they're always wanting to learn things and understand things. They're good at troubleshooting and fixing things, and they're not afraid to ask questions. That's amazing. I think that's one of the biggest confidence aspects that I struggled with, especially studying, was I was so afraid to ask a professional in the space a question at the fear of sounding silly. Someone said they're punctual, reliable, and deliverables driven. Someone said positive self-talk. Every professional was once a beginner. That's so true.
100%. Found out rejection challenge. Greet or make small talk to a new person that works in my building that I've not spoken to before. Yeah. Great. Go for it.
Yes, definitely.
And just a little bit of my own personal story. And I think it's nice to share a little bit of a personal background as well, because you're sharing your personal background here as well. I used to fear public speaking, and here I'm sitting to almost 100 of you speaking to you, and I never loved public speaking. But what I did is I actually got myself to begin speaking. People would present me with challenges, present me with options to do a public speaking thing. For example, I work very much in the school space. So we do presentations to teachers, to students, to parents. And my boss one day came to me and said, would you like to do this presentation? Without hesitation, I said yes. And I think that was important for me because I knew in the back of my mind that I had the confidence, I had the knowledge to do the presentation, but that self-doubt was creeping in at the beginning. If I didn't say yes initially, I probably would never have done it. I probably wouldn't be here today. So it's important is that not everything is going to go according to plan, especially when you're trying new things. But what's important is that you're taking that step to build your confidence. I didn't have the best of starts when I started public speaking, but as time went on, it slowly grew. And that's basically saying yes to challenges, growing that confidence. Sometimes it's going to knock you down, but it's also what's important is that you sit and you reflect and you look at what were the situations behind it. Where did I mess up, or where was like maybe a situational thing that maybe caused me to mess up? What was it? So that self-reflection, like we spoke about a little bit earlier, in that positive self-talk is very important. And then I just want to move on to, okay, here we have another rejection challenge before I quickly move on. Talk to hyper-successful people in your field. They're willing more to answer your questions than you think. The people who you think are very likely the best mentors come sorry. Thank you. Do not have time to mentor me properly. I don't have a single mentor. I just kept asking questions.
I think that's so important, is to not be shy to go and ask for help. I think we've all been there. Donna and I actually started working in the medical space together, and you kind of get thrown in the deep end a bit, where you, like, not everyone has time to walk you around and show you how to do things, and you had to kind of be confident and humble enough at the same time to go to someone and say, I actually need a little bit of guidance here, whether it was a supervisor or just someone more experienced. And you find that you learn so much more from that, which is really good.
So just bringing you into the confidence competence loop. And basically what this is doing, it's building up that confidence. And how do we do that? So that's by taking action. Actually saying yes to that public speaking opportunity, for example. Maybe at the beginning it wasn't that great, but there was a small success, is I actually stood there, I actually said things to people, and it boosted my confidence a little bit. It was a risk, so I took the next risk. I said yes to another thing, and therefore my skills continue to grow. And it just continues and continues. And the more you do things, the more you challenge yourself, the more that goal almost continues to grow. So you've reached this goal, that next goal, and the next point moves. So you want to reach that next one, and so forth. And that's what happens. Just like that sedimentation, it builds up layer by layer through those small ones.
Okay, so then we thought we'd go through another mini activity. Sorry, we're interactive presentative. So the activity that we planned is a confidence flip. So everyone can take a limiting belief about themselves and rewrite it into an empowering statement, which actually links to a therapeutic technique that we often use in cognitive behavioral therapy, where you kind of do a laddering where you keep challenging your limiting beliefs and rewriting them until you become the confident person that you are deep down. So an example of this is, I'm not smart enough to understand complex geological models. And we can rewrite that into, understanding complex models is different, but with time, practice, and support, I can improve and make sense of them. So it's really just like a different perspective of looking at things, and it links a lot into the growth mindset. And I think it's important, your perspective on a situation will definitely impact your confidence. Like, thinking, oh my word, I have to present in front of 100 people. What if I fail? Rather than thinking, I get to present in front of 100 people, and it's a new challenge and a new experience. And if I mess up, then it's a growth opportunity. And it just becomes a lot more positive and makes it a little bit more fun and less scary.
So we'll just give you a few minutes just to think about, maybe, especially in your field, I think it's great to hear in your field, what are those areas where you want to do a bit of a confidence flip? So what is that limiting belief that you've thought about? Yeah, and then let's rewrite that into an empowering statement.
So that's good. Someone said, rather than using the word difficult, you can use the word challenging, which does just reframe it to be a bit more positive. And I know that sharing, like Donna said, like, we don't know each other. Sharing on the chat can be a little bit intimidating, but I think it's also an important part of confidence is to see, like, the stressful things that we build up in our mind, or the things that we're not good at, someone else is thinking, actually, you are really good at that. Or if you're struggling with a certain aspect of your job, you speak out and someone else says, oh my word, I'm actually also really struggling with that, and then it's something you can work on together, or maybe brainstorm a different way to do it.
So Ivana shared a limiting belief that she has. I'm not qualified to be doing a PhD in chemical engineering with a background in geology. Reframing it into, I believe I can almost do anything I devote my time and energy to. It may take time for me to adjust, but anything is possible with strong belief and consequent actions. Love it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because already, like, you can see there the limiting belief, using a little bit of that negative mindset. I'm not qualified, so not qualified. But then moving more into, I believe I can do this. So this is great.
So, all right, I should be wearing glasses right now. I don't know enough in my field and I answered incorrectly. Versus some questions can be challenging. It's okay to give myself time to learn and apply new knowledge to better position myself next time to answer difficult questions. That's also a really good one.
When you suggested replace scared with cautious, it helped a lot. That's great.
Take the world scared makes things 10 times more intimidating than they have to be.
I often link scared with fear. So maybe cautious, maybe I'm just like not quite sure, which is great. That's great.
Yeah, these are really, really good contributions.
Anybody else would like to share? If you want to chat with us, you're more than welcome to just unmute. I can't see hands, unfortunately. I'm not a Zoom expert, but I can see the chat at the moment. Okay, so I think let's move on to wrapping up. And if we have any questions, then we can go ahead with the questions. Sorry, just want to change my slide. There we go. All right, so just to remember, confidence is not a skill. Confidence is a skill. It's not a personality trait. Our words are getting hit.
Confidence is built through self-awareness, positive self-talk, and taking action. Just to remember that confidence loop that Donna talked about earlier. It's really, really helpful.
And having that growth mindset. So shifting away from that fixed mindset into that growth mindset.
So the next time you feel like you're not ready or you're unprepared, try acting like someone is and take the first confidence step. In other easier words, fake it till you make it. And then back it up with curiosity, effort, and learning. Every experience is a learning experience. Whether it's a good or a bad one, you can always take something away and reflect on how things can improve. Or it's just a good experience, and that's builds your confidence. So we thought we'd end with one last cheesy geology quote. Even the most solid-looking rock can be faulted. That doesn't mean it won't hold up a mountain. We had to include some geology puns throughout our presentation. I hope that they weren't inaccurate.
Let us know if they are.
Yeah, let us know. We'll reflect on that.
Excellent. And then just a little bit of to take away with you. Here's a little QR code. We're going to give you some time just to scan it. So it just has a little bit of more information on some podcasts. So those who like to maybe listen to some podcasts, I think you might have heard of Jay Shetty. There's quite a few of his podcasts on that recommendation, and just a little bit of activities on building that confidence, just to take away with you.
Thanks so much, Lutendo, and thanks everybody for being here. How wonderful to engage with you all today. And I'm so impressed with the idea of thinking about soft skills for a morning or for a day, because this is really what the workplace is about these days. If you want to be effective in your working life, a lot of it is going to be about relationships. A lot of it is going to be about relationships. And the workplace is fundamentally a social environment. And if you are going to be effective in your work, then managing those relationships is going to be really important. So I'm going to touch a little bit on this in the course of engaging with you today. And please engage on the chat. I would have loved to have had another half hour on confidence. That was brilliant. And thinking about confidence as a basis for building assertiveness and really being effective in the workplace is wonderful. So very much thank you to the previous speakers. I'm going to talk about how you manage interruptions, how you manage disruptions at work, and how you manage meetings, particularly because meetings take up a huge amount of our time. So just thinking about my work, which is really coaching people, mediating conflict, engaging with all kinds of different people. And when I coach people, I find a huge amount of stress that people bring to me. How am I going to manage all this stress? How am I going to manage my long hours at work? And it seems to be something that really builds up for people, particularly as they move from where we start to where we move into middle management and more senior management. Stress becomes a huge issue, and it's a health issue, and people die of it. So thinking about how we manage our working lives, how we manage our days in a way that helps us to manage stress is really, really important. And it's something to start thinking about at an early point in your career, not to wait until it starts to really pull you down. One of the things that I see with a lot of people is they spend a lot of time driving to work. And I'm thinking about someone that I coached a few years ago who was spending between 5 and 15 hours every week just driving to and from work. And the stress that comes with that is huge, never mind the wasted time and the cost of it. And I spoke to him and said, would it be possible for sometimes you spend a day at home working instead of driving to the office? Oh yeah, I'm quite allowed to do that, he said, but I'm afraid of not being with my team. And I said, I want to encourage you to, from now on, to spend at least one day a week working from home. And immediately you're going to save 2-3 hours in the traffic and reducing your stress by that amount. So sometimes little things that we can do, or we have the freedom to do, can immediately start helping us to reduce stress. So thinking about all the interruptions and the distractions that we have on a daily basis, I want to maybe put out a few things that might be a little bit provocative or might challenge you. And please engage with me on the chat if you would like. That would be really wonderful. So the one thing I would say, first of all, is thinking about email. Thinking about email and the amount of time we spend on our laptops, waiting or immediately responding to emails that come every day. We actually allow email to dominate a lot of our working lives, and a lot of the time we sit on our laptops, and as soon as an email comes in, even though it may not have been part of our plan for the day, but as soon as an email comes in, we think we have to respond to it, especially if it's copied to everybody. I would suggest that one of the important things that we can do in terms of managing our day effectively is to decide how much time we are going to spend every day responding and writing emails, and to set aside a certain amount of time every day when we work with our email, so that we are not all the time, every day, throughout the day, just waiting and responding to emails that come and go from our laptop, but to set aside a certain amount of time every day when we are going to work with our email, and then maybe other times of the day we are not. So you close down your email program even and open it up at the time that suits you. If you respond to an email within 24 hours, it's usually pretty reasonable. So maybe that's the first provocative thing that I would say. Don't do email all the time, every day, because it is going to be a huge distraction for you and get in the way of working effectively. I don't know if there are any thoughts about that. Sometimes people say to me, oh, but my boss expects me to respond immediately if I send an email. So this is where confidence of being assertive is going to come in very handy, that you make it clear that you're not always going to respond to an email within 5 minutes. That's about working with email. And maybe deciding when I come into the office in the morning, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spend half an hour going through my emails and responding to the ones that are particularly important. And then maybe I'll spend some other time, maybe after lunch or something like that, dealing with the responses, then going through replies and things like that, and keeping that again to maybe half an hour, so that you're freeing up time when you are not going to be distracted by emails. Yeah, Peace, you say you're managing a backlog, 3 weeks backlog. So set aside some time to deal with that, I think is important. But again, I wouldn't just spend the whole time every day plowing through emails, because you're immediately going to be distracted. But to set aside time when you do it. So I would go with what Ivana is saying. Aim to respond within the day, but give it a quick browse in the morning for anything urgent. Respond then, and then maybe early afternoon or last thing in the evening, you manage responses, manage replies, but you are allowing a certain amount of time for yourself to manage your email communications. It's challenging, and many of us spend a lot of time just sitting on the laptop dealing with emails, as if email is going to be the most important thing that ever happens in our lives. Sanchia. Yeah.
Hello. I just have a question with regards to assertiveness in the workplace. How do we find the balance between being assertive without coming across as rude, especially when you're speaking to someone of a higher position?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And, there are courses that you can do on being assertiveness, but fundamentally, I would say that the starting point for assertiveness is that you are okay and the other person is okay. And we'll start from there. And to create that mindset for yourself in terms of communicating with people. It doesn't mean that we can't be upset or angry sometimes, or feel that we're being pushed down or whatever it is, but in terms of how we manage our communication with people, to keep it at a level tone. So even if you are upset or angry, you don't raise your voice or start shouting. And also you don't become completely submissive and quiet, but you speak your truth. So this is partly about the confidence point that we were thinking about earlier, to keep that level tone. And sometimes you can say to somebody, look, I feel a bit upset by how you're approaching me with this. And I do want to respond to your concerns. So you can see I keep my voice at a level tone as I respond in an assertive way, acknowledging the concerns of the other person and also putting your own truth onto the table at the same time. But Sanchia, it's a whole thing that you could build on in terms of confidence, in terms of how you build yourself as an assertive person who's not going to be walked over, but also who will be confident enough to speak your truth without being angry or trying to dominate either, acknowledging that the other person is also always okay. Yes, step into...
Thank you.
Yeah, Sanchia, I hope that helps. And Ivana's points are important as well. But I think assertiveness is a really important skill to be able to build.
Yes, I think
Also being able to say to people, look, I'm not always going to respond to your email immediately, because I set aside certain times every day when I work with my email so that I can achieve all the things I have to achieve. And to be able to discuss and negotiate that with important people in your working environment. So managing emails is important. When I deal with conflict, by the way, a lot of conflict in the workplace goes back to email communication that is mishandled. That's a story for another day, really, but I think it's important always to think about how you respond to emails, because there's such massive scope for email communication to be misinterpreted or misunderstood. So to think carefully when you respond to people, particularly if somebody has sent an email that might have upset you in some ways. So setting aside time for things that are important, not just being distracted immediately as soon as an email arrives. And I think with that, there's something else that I would say, which is the value sometimes of closing your door. Sometimes we leave our doors open. People walk in and out. They come with stuff, issues, or they just want to chat about whatever it is. And you're busy writing a report that needs your focused attention. So I think there is huge value sometimes, again, in closing your door, even having a notice on the outside sometimes saying, please do not disturb. Some people might be upset about that initially or misunderstand it or misinterpret it. So you might have to speak with people about why sometimes it's important for you just not to be disturbed and to be able to concentrate and focus on a particular task or particular report or presentation that you might be working on. And I think it's important not to be afraid sometimes to close your door. And you can say, look, I'll be free again between 1:30 and 3:00 or whenever it is. If there's something urgent, pop me a message or do knock on the door. But for the most part, I don't want to be disturbed just at the moment. Again, part of being assertive, valuing your own time as well as the needs of other people, but not just always being available for any distraction that comes along. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Be confident. Sometimes to look after your own needs in the workplace as well as respecting the needs of other people. Closing the door. I want to just say something then about meetings, because it's really clear all over the world that as people, particularly as people become more senior in the workplace or move into middle management and become more senior, they spend increasing amounts of time sitting in meetings, and meetings that very often are not adding the kind of value that is needed, maybe for everybody or maybe just for you. You've been called into a meeting and the meeting is not adding value. You see a lot of people sitting in meetings looking down because they're busy working with their laptops or their devices under the table, because the meeting is not useful, not a good use of time. And a huge amount of management time is wasted with people sitting in meetings that may not be necessary, may not be being well managed, or may not be relevant to you and your particular work. So I think it's important to think about, firstly, which meetings are you going to attend, which are important for your work. And for meetings, if you are managing the meetings, to manage them really well and efficiently, because meeting time is very consuming in terms of the amount of time that managers spend in those meetings. I work with a company that has banned PowerPoint in meetings, by the way. They've banned PowerPoint because they say it's not a good use of management time. People digest information on PowerPoint at different speeds. So some people are rushing through PowerPoints, and then other people in the meeting feel that they've missed things. Other people are too slow, and people feel that the time is being wasted. So in the company, what they do is they say, if you have a PowerPoint presentation, please send it beforehand. People can go through it, and then when people come to the meeting, having been through the PowerPoint presentation beforehand, they can bring their questions. And we're going to have a much more useful meeting in which people interact on the important issues, rather than just sitting passively watching and hearing somebody deliver their PowerPoint presentation. So there are different ways of thinking about how meetings can be effectively managed to make maximum use of people's time. And then I think with that, I would say that many meetings can be recorded. Many meetings can be recorded. And if meetings are being recorded, then maybe it's not always necessary for you to attend every meeting. Then you can go through the recording again at a time that suits you and works for you, so that you don't miss out on important information. I'm just looking at Ivana's chat. In being assertive, do you think employees are able to negotiate their presence in meetings if they think it's not important and urgent? I think so. I think this is again about how you negotiate, sometimes with a boss or with colleagues, in terms of who really needs to be in this meeting, what information can be shared online or separately. Can the meeting be recorded if it's not convenient for you to attend a meeting at a particular scheduled time? Please, could the meeting be recorded, and I will go through it. Or the meeting can be summarized at the end in terms of key decisions that are made. So I think it's really important to be able to negotiate assertively whether you attend, how the meeting is going to be managed, can it be summarized at the end, who really needs to be there, and do you really need to be there? Because we can spend a huge amount of our time going into meetings, often meetings that are called the last minute as well, which again is disruptive and interrupting your daily work plan. So I think, again, it's about thinking of what are your needs in terms of how you manage your work, how you get through what are often heavy workloads in a way that enables you to focus on what's important, not to be interrupted at random by the email or the knock on the door or whatever it happens to be. I think these things are really important, and also help you manage your stress, which is in your health interests apart from anything else. I think the other thing that I would like to say is to get back to the question about time on relationships. Relationships are going to be the key to your effectiveness, effective working relationships. Building and developing effective working relationships is going to be key to delivering what needs to be done and to being effective and recognized also in the workplace. So building those networks and relationships is incredibly valuable. So all of the above in terms of empathy, building your confidence, and so on. And I think I would say this, that if you are managing people, if you are leading a team or managing people, what they say is that you should usually spend about 5% of your time for each person that you lead or manage. They should get about 5% of your time, your overall time in a week. So if you're managing 5 people, leading a team of 5 people, as a rule of thumb, it's good to think that's going to take up about 25% of my time engaging with those people, 5% of the time for each person that you lead or manage. And that's a good rule of thumb for thinking about what they need from you. So when I hear people, sometimes they come to me and say, Mark, I'm leading a team of 20 people. I say, that's all, you've got no time then for anything else, because 20 people is 100% of your time, or should be. So you're not going to have time for anything else. So leading a team of 20 people or managing a group of 20 people in the workplace is too much. Each person that you lead or manage needs about 5% of your time. And sometimes that's the softer stuff that you're having to manage. Sometimes it's going to be about KPIs and so on, but sometimes it's dealing with their personal stuff, or helping them or guiding them or supporting them in dealing with personal stuff. People don't leave everything at home. Some of what they are dealing with, they bring into the workplace, and that demands some of your time as the leader or manager of the team to engage with them. And you need that time to be able to do that. I just want to check in on any particular questions. I've got 1 or 2 other things I just want to talk about, but please wave a hand or something. I'm covering quite a lot of ground, I think, in a short space of time. I would say, and again, it was touched on in the confidence conversation, do find time to have a coach or a mentor in the workplace, particularly if you are still building your career. I would say that every professional person needs a coach or a mentor to guide them And it's really valuable to think about who that's going to be for you. I was watching some of the tennis Wimbledon recently, and I gather that Novak Djokovic has a team of 10 people who support him on different aspects of his tennis career. Wow, I would like to have 10 people working with me. But I think at the very least have one coach or mentor who can help and guide you in building your career. Because if you want to get to those stratospheric heights that someone like Novak Djokovic can get to, he doesn't get there without coaching and mentoring support. It's very acceptable in the sporting arena to have a coach. It's still a little bit frowned on sometimes in the workplace. People think that if you have a coach, then it's because you've got a problem. But I would say no, it's because you want to be really the best at what you do, be a really well-developed professional person. To have that coaching and mentoring support is incredibly valuable. And then the last thing that I think I would say is that we are in the learning business. Whatever business we are in, we are in the learning business these days. And to build and develop your career, it's really important to set aside time for learning. Every week, every month in your working life, you need to reflect on what you are learning, what you still need to learn if you are going to develop and move forward. And particularly on the soft skills, actually, because the softer skills are the ones that are never taught in university or in the business school. So opportunities like this to develop and practice then soft skills with a coach, with a mentor, with a colleague, and to get feedback, incredibly valuable. And to consistently, as you build and develop your career, to think about, what am I learning at the moment? This is something that has stayed with me throughout my career. Yesterday I was doing a mediation process, and I had a co-observer with my mediation who gives me feedback. And we're planning a feedback session in which she will give me detailed feedback on how I performed in the mediation process yesterday. Incredibly valuable for me. And not just somebody who says, Mark, you're doing fine. It's all good. It's nice to hear that. But what I really need is the critical feedback. There's somebody who say, Mark, you're not asking enough open questions, or whatever it is. Something for me to think about and learn from. Incredibly important. I'm thinking about managing time now, and I'm coming towards the end of my half hour. So Keegan is saying, if you want to ballpark figures, how much to spend on coaching courses and training, use 3 to 5% of your salary. I think that's really good. And maybe also is going to take that percentage of your time as well. We should be spending and allocating a certain amount of time and resources to our own ongoing professional development. Thanks, Keegan. Yeah. Any questions, any thoughts? I hope I've provoked you a little bit. I've stunned you all into silence. I can see that. Any questions? Sanshia again. Hi. Oh, you're just clapping. Thank you. I hope it's insightful, Leilani. Thanks very much for feedback. I think at the core of it all is the idea to be assertive about what you need to be effective for your boss, for the workplace, and for yourself as well. Ivana.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for a very interesting talk. I've listened to what you've said, and I understand the importance of being assertive, but I think my question around that is when you've got a superior, and I think one of the important things as well, whenever we try and implement any of these types of advice, is that we need to understand the personality of people. While one person may receive your assertiveness while another person may not, and they would make your life absolute hell, sorry to say. So what are your comments on that? Because yeah, I think it's important to be assertive, but what is the balance? Like, is there a balance?
Yes, thanks, Ivan. A really good question. I think that it's firstly, I would say pick your battles. Don't fight every single battle just because somebody annoys you or provokes you. But if you never respond, if someone is making your life miserable, then you're going to end up becoming passive aggressive. And at some point, it's going to come out, either with your boss or with somebody else. You're just suddenly going to lose it. So I think it's in terms of managing your stress and responding to difficult people, it's really valuable to practice assertiveness. And practice, first of all, on people who are less likely to respond in a negative way, but to build up assertiveness as your way of working and as your practice and as your professionalism as an assertive person. And there will be people sometimes who maybe don't respond to it well, but that's really their problem. What is important is that you are building yourself as a professional, as an assertively communicating individual, and managing your own stress and your own life in such a way that the vast majority of your relationships are going to, at work, in the workplace, but also in your personal life, are going to be better. And really what happens if you build assertiveness as a good way of working and as a good way of being at work, most managers at some point will realize that if they want to get good results from you, the screaming and shouting is not actually going to be the best way for them to do it. And they will probably end up leaving you alone and going and screaming and shouting at somebody else, but you will be better off. So I think practicing and working with assertiveness is generally going to make your life much easier. A boss who is going to work as a tyrant with you is going to do that anyway, probably. The important thing is not to let it impact on you too much. Ivana, I hope that helps. Thanks.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Believe me, I've been there, done it. Well, I've worked for that tyrant. I've worked for that tyrant in my life.
A very good afternoon to all of you colleagues and the geological fraternity and online community at large. I'd like to first give kudos to the GSSA for initiating an important initiative such as this, which in its own right is a contribution to nation building. And also a special thank you to you, the GSSA, for affording me this opportunity and privilege to share my perspective and worldview on owning one's career. Kenneth Malanzi has already introduced a curious and hungry mind. While I find myself in a position to share a fortunate and illustrious career of adventure, I'm not oblivious to some of the social ills we find ourselves in as a nation. And on the backdrop of this picture, most of us would be quite familiar with it. There's one of Cape Town, and there's one in Sandton, which speaks to South Africa being the most unequal country in the world. So I thought I'd just be mindful that FSA says that some 270,000 graduates are unemployed. And you find, while I'm giving this topic, freshly qualified minds locked out before they can even begin from a broken promise of education unlocking doors. There was an article a colleague of mine wrote, Dr. Stephen Zwane, he rightfully puts it in saying that today's youth, like the youth of 76, face a different yet equally violent form of oppression, which is unemployment and economic exclusion. So I think this topic is very fitting in how one can navigate within career control and ultimately making the most of what the employment landscape looks like today, because the preservation of education does hinge on our careers. And perhaps within this room today, some of the solutions that may arise to our greatest challenges lie within this audience. So for me, the topic of owning your career resonates with what is called career control. And career control basically refers to the control of one's vocation or their future in terms of decision making, their locus of control, and self-determination. So for the next few moments in me sharing, I'd like to give a brief overview so that we can be in conversation. I'll be speaking to three buckets, really. I think it would be important to preface my conversation with the context of who I am and how I'm showing up today. And then I'll reflect on my journey throughout my career, and to the meat of today, touch a bit on what are some of the practical or pragmatic approaches we can do towards career control. But yeah, and then we'll speak to that through conversation. Maybe just as a fun starter, beyond the suit and tie, I am a husband to one of the coolest geologists I know. My wife is a geo, and a father to two amazing girls. Outside work, I'm big on the outdoors and having endurance sports. So I love my outdoors, and I thought I'd share this with you to also make a mention that within these multiple facets of how I show up, I seek to marry all of that even within my career, because it does have its own benefits. And maybe when I do speak in my journey, a lot might not be said, but through the story, one will pick up those nuggets, which I'm happy to broach further in conversation at the Q&A part. It would be an injustice for me not to also share a bit of my philosophy, which is that knowledge asymmetry disadvantages us. It's not a competitive advantage. And without throwing around big words, knowledge asymmetry is essentially the imbalance in our knowledge, whether it's between individuals, organizations, or groups. And I put three pictures here on the left, which I'll speak to, because I think the right is relatively self-explanatory. The top left picture is the Tour de France, which is, I think it's on stage 12 now. And the beauty of competition in this space is that everyone at that level knows, in terms of nutrition, in terms of exercise, and in terms of training, what it takes to be a high quality athlete. But it's the variables in between which surprise us on each day on who wins. So for me, respectfully, if my competition is better than me from a knowledge base, it's not really competition, but it's those insights you draw, or the dots you get to connect, that ultimately give you that cutting edge. And then in the middle, we have Neil Borden. That's an engineer from Volvo, who is the pioneer behind the modern day seatbelt as we know it. An interesting fact there is Volvo's gift to the world at the time was to say that millions of lives can be saved from the best approach at the time to protect our passengers and drivers using automobiles. And so they shared that patent freely with the entire automotive industry. And many, many moons later, we still use it. So having that mindset of beyond the knowledge, what does competition look like? And last but not least, there's a music theorist. I hope I don't butcher his name. He's Italian. He goes by Guido of Arezzo. The long and short of him is he's the reason behind our musical notation as we know it, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. He's the one who developed it into a more simpler, inclusive state to say, if more people have an easier way of reading, writing, and remembering musical notations, the more the merrier. We can actually compose a lot more music across the world. So a universal language was developed from this pioneer who's a music theorist, which essentially speaks to what I do. I find myself in the ESG space, environmental, social, and governance. And my kids remember it with the triple P, people, profit, and planet, understanding that by virtue of our existence and the operation of our business or our everyday lives, we have an impact whether it's upstream or downstream on our planet, the people we see, and the profits, be it our own or other people's. So that mindfulness of inclusion is a resonating theme for me. And that was just a bit of my background to preface it with a bit of context on who it is I am. I'm going to spend a bit of time on the slide just to reflect on my journey in the last 12 years. Pre-work, I studied geology up until honors, and my master's was in geohydrology. I was a beneficiary of a bursary, and I started my career in a time where there was a merger and acquisition of our mine, and there was a lot of retrenchment, but my company wanted to get a bit of ROI, or return on investment, on their investment, which was me. And the opening at the time was the environmental department. As a young person, I was rather gutted over that, because the mindset was, if I wanted to be in ESG, I would have potentially studied something that resonated with that. But little did I know that the future of work and the world of work as we know it becomes very multidisciplinary, and there's a convergence with all our disciplines to what it is that we do. So taking you back on a journey of young me, my heart was, I want to do something geologically related. But yeah, so I got introduced to the environmental department and learned of a concept called sustainable development. And as already mentioned, that's the triple P: people, profit, and planet. I was very curious about it, but within the setting, I found myself, that was a bit of a swear word, because sustainable development at the time was a head office or headquarter role, which was reserved for, even the language itself seemed a bit elitist, but sustainable development affects you and I in our everyday lives. So while making the most of my situation, I looked at SD a lot. I spent about just under 3 years. 2015 December is when I left my first role. So I spent roughly 3 years. But interestingly, in this part, I carved my way out to say, okay, I can't go back to geology with how things are, but the hydrology space, there was a gap. So we carved something for me there, which had its own limitations, obviously, from a budget perspective with the restructuring of what we've done. But I was happy that I was entertained as a young person to be the hydrologist of the company at the time for 6 months. But the true learning happened when I pivoted to a petrochemical space, where I actually got to do geohydrology. And maybe I'll pause here and say, looking back, it was a bit short-sighted to want to go back to what I studied, because no amount of experience goes to waste. And with every single discipline, you get exposed to so much more, which might ultimately redirect or even pivot you. So by the time I was in year 5 of my work, I thought, I don't see myself going back into geology. So looking back, in hindsight, I'm glad I had the exposure, but I think irrespective of where we find ourselves within our workspaces, it's always good to be open to learning and open to addressing your organization's needs. Or ultimately, as Mark Twain says, you are not a tree. If you don't like where you are, move. So yeah, that was the hard sciences part. But while within the petrochemical stage, I got exposed to more geologists who were in the business improvement space, Lean Six Sigma. And I was quite curious about that, learning about what does it mean to drive departmental or organizational change and revenue savings. So the mindset at the time was looking at that triple P to say, okay, within the environmental space, I do get to interact with people from a complaints perspective, public participation, and even rollout and training of systems. And then the plan in itself is covered, but what does profit look like? So I started exposing myself. The miners will be familiar with mine closure and rehabilitation, but within the petrochemical space, it's called SOX provisioning. So that was my long-winded way of having the three buckets, as I knew then, into the profit space, where we started speaking about the assets and liabilities of the organization and some of the commitments or covenants that they need to adhere to in terms of compliance. So that was a fun space. And I ultimately pivoted to business improvement, sharpening my language and business acumen, and even the types of stakeholders. I got a lot of face time with senior leadership, which also helps because it centers one in terms of your conversation and pitching. Understanding your audience is a very powerful tool in terms of stakeholder engagement. So that was quite fun. And it was short-lived though, because through the ESG aspect and learning a bit more, I realized that within our context, actually, the financiers play a very important role. We can speak to legislation, we can speak to compliance and initiatives, but a lot of this cost and transition or the road to net zero has actually been heralded as the most expensive capital allocation requirement of our time. And that's where my interest in finance was garnered. And fortunately or unfortunately, my foot in the door was through development finance, which was in China. I spent 3 years in Shanghai with my family, doing some great work from a development perspective and learning. I had the privilege of working across the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and a little bit of South Africa. And I think that exposure and global citizenship was very rewarding in terms of understanding that there's a bigger world than the world we know today. And this speaks to even a new job from a company organization perspective, a sectoral perspective, even industry. There's a lot of pivoting abroad. They literally have everyone and everything, which was very refreshing. And you see that even in the education system, the masters typically welcome any bachelors, and that's where you can curb your curiosity or enthusiasm and quench that thirst for that knowledge. I'm also of the philosophy that we learn, we earn, and we need to return. So I found that while being abroad, it would be an injustice to be a part of the brain drain. I came back home and wanted to actually be in an exciting space which looks at what does this look like. So development finance, typically the financing leg is from a sovereign loan level bond. So it's government to government. I came back home to investment banking or commercial banking. And with a Pan-African bank, I don't have to hide the name. I think everyone can see it. That's ABSA. So it was very interesting to look at it from an Afrocentric lens to say, how do we finance these deals? How do we balance development and environmental protection? And how do we ensure within our organization, the three pillars being financial inclusion, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and the climate space, having all those conversations. And maybe just to share, as I close off within this space, part of our strategy when we started off the department and I got here was to embed ESG across the firm. So that allowed one to a whole of franchise approach, learning different stakeholders and ensuring that through the embedment, not only is there consistency in messaging, but there's also an understanding of putting the scientific hat, the banker's hat, and in my own personal space, the inclusivity hat, marrying that with a balance And yeah, so I find myself in a situation now, as you see at the bottom, September, I will be heading up the stakeholder engagement space within corporate affairs. It speaks strongly to the E, to the S in ESG. So it's another pivot, but a summary of the slide would essentially be pivoting passion and purpose, just having that curiosity and pivoting as and when you find the need, firstly, from an organizational or sectoral space, and your need from a personal growth perspective, and also just aligning that, finding yourself in a state of ikigai. So this is the last slide before we get into conversation. I just wanted to share this part as well to say, for me, tying it back to career control, recognizing that I had plateaued and driven by a conviction to improve, I proactively sought coaching in sports to push beyond my limits. I'll start with sports because that's where I took coaching seriously and then brought it to my career, which speaks to career control. So the first picture there on the left, the swimming part, you realize that you are actually water safe. You're not a swimmer when you have to do a mid-mile. And so stroke correction, learning, unlearning, getting that endurance and ability to find yourself ultimately swimming 3 kilometers in the water. I found that there's only so much I can do with my knowledge base, but with somebody who is qualified in that area, there's an accelerated pivot. Even with the cycling, I did the Mandela Ride for Hope, where we cycle from Howick in KZN, which is where he was captured, prison-wise. And we cycled all the way to Brno, which is his hometown. So that was quite fun. I could do a 94.7, but cycling over 4 days, over a stretch of 500 plus kilometers, needed a new set of training. And I'm thankful that I solicited that. And the last picture there is Shanghai. I think the Shanghai Marathon, and even its half marathon, is quite something good in the sense that you've got a 0.4% chance of getting there. So getting in, I thought, let me have a personal best, got a coach and did that. So that's my background or relationship with coaching and appreciation there of it. And marginal gains, essentially making small incremental improvements in various areas to ultimately combine it to a significant overall improvement, is something that we worked with and leaned on, particularly within my business improvement life, where we were saying Kaizen at work, to change for the better or to continually improve. And where I solicited an actual career coach was me wanting to transition from a specialist to a senior leadership. And what I'm sharing with you there is readily available on the net. Typically, the GROW model is often used, where we talk about your goal, your reality, your options or obstacles, and your will. Essentially being intentional, planning your work and working your plan with the mindfulness of there are things within my locus of control, but there are also things that aren't within, and how do I navigate and recalibrate my module at all times. So that's when I got into the coaching space, and it's been very helpful. A coach is not a doctor-patient relationship. It's more of a partnership of expressing your goal and your reality and options towards your growth. You go through what you go through with them. And I think it's a very useful tool.
Cool. So I'm the last speaker for today. And now that you all know how to build a beautiful CV, ace your interview, be a really good team player, use your EQ, and have learned how to be more self-confident, and you're now nice and settled in your job, what's going to happen? There's going to be some sort of turbulence that's going to come and try and derail you. And I can say this with confidence because I worked in the mining industry for 25 years. And when I say turbulence, it doesn't just mean horrible and soul-destroying company restructures. I also mean terrible bosses, being undervalued and underpaid, and some personal dramas. All of these factors will lead to you not having such a nice time at work. So since I'm the last speaker for the day, I thought I would tell you a story, and hopefully you can find some value in it. This story is about my career and all the things that tried to derail it, and what I did about those things, and how I eventually landed up in a place where I'm in control of my own life and of my own choices. And so here goes. I'm going to start here because firstly, geology. It's a prime example of geology. This is where I ended up after working in the mining industry for 25 years. I ended up here on my own terms and in my own time. Last year, November, I finally fulfilled a lifelong dream to see the Himalayas. And I did a 24-day trek called the Three Passes Trek. This is the view from Ranjula in Nepal. It is the first pass that we crossed. And that is Gokuri in the far, in the distance. And I'm sure you can recognize Mount Everest. So how did I manage to take so much leave? You're probably wondering. How did I manage to take 24 days off? In fact, I didn't just take 24 days off. I took a whole year off. I took a whole year sabbatical. And this whole story is about how I managed to do this and how you can do this as well and how you can plan for it. And I'd love for you to be able to pursue your own dreams as well. So let's go back to the beginning. This is me in 1997, jumping off Vic Falls. This has happened while I was at a geophysical conference, and I should have been in the potential field session at the South African Geophysical Conference. And I'm sure many of you understand geophysics, and you know that potential fields mean gravity and magnetic techniques. So here I'm testing gravity. I love this photo because I look so bold and unafraid, and my whole career is still in front of me. I have no idea what's coming. I decided to study geology and geophysics because a teacher in school had told me that I might like geophysics and geology, and it sounded like a good idea because it looked like I might not be stuck behind a desk the whole day. I was lucky to have a GenCorp bursary, and later that same year I started working for them. I really liked to be a geophysicist because I got to be able to study work outside. This is me in Zambia. I'm doing an IP survey, dragging wires through the field. I don't know why I'm dressed like this. I think I'm wearing corduroy pants. I have no idea why I'm wearing that. At least I'm wearing a hat. But anyway, moving on. The company then sent me to China. And this is where I found myself where the company went through its first big restructure. I was observing Chinese magnetic surveys in the foothills of the Himalayas. The company decided that there would be no work for me if I went back. So my choices were either I stay in China or I go back to Joburg and get retrenched. I should have stayed in China because there was a boyfriend back home, but I went back for a boyfriend back home, and he broke up with me the day I got back. So I should have stayed. And the reason for this restructure was because Billiton was merging with BHP, and they were consolidating all of their technical people. At this point, I started getting sort of an idea of what it meant to be a technical person working in a big mining company. It looked like they decided where they were going to send me and where I was needed, and I didn't have much choice in the matter. I wasn't so sure that I liked that so much because I kind of like being in control of my own life. But as many of you know, as you start out, you don't have a lot of control over where the company is going to send you. And it is a massive opportunity to learn, so you do want to also go where they send you. So I went back to Joburg. I got retrenched. So what next? Oh, and I'm really single, by the way, as well. So I floated around for a bit. I was a substitute teacher. I wrote articles for an online encyclopedia. I then worked in a GIS and remote sensing consultancy. I don't even know if that's a job anymore. And then I went to work as a research geophysicist for the CSIR, where I really immersed myself in radar technologies. Here we also went through a restructure, but I survived. But they gave us like no increases that year. So I decided that I couldn't work for a company that paid me so little. So I decided to apply for a job at Anglo American. And from here, I then went back to Anglo American. I do have to say I did love my job at the CSIR. And if they had paid me what I was worth, I might have stayed. But I decided to move back to a big big corporates, and I went to Anglo-American. So here I am at Los Brances. Here I'm still a geophysicist, but in 2008, many of you know, the global economic crisis happened and all the commodity prices tanked, and they went through a restructure. So another restructure happened. I was lucky at that point in time. I was the only geophysicist who was doing brownfields exploration and in-mine geophysics. So I had to specialize a little bit. So they couldn't really get rid of me. There was nobody else that was doing that work. So that's a good strategy to have as well, is to specialize so that you are sort of indispensable. But at the same time, in this department where I was indispensable, I had a boss that was a bit of a problem for me. He was everything that ended with an ist. He was a misogynist, a racist, a sexist. We just didn't get along. And he loved to let me know that he's in charge of my performance review. So that is really a toxic relationship. So while I was working in this department, in geophysics, I also started looking around at where I could move to. And I got myself onto some mining operational reviews, which were conducted by the business improvement team. And in 2012, I managed to move into business improvement. So that whole time was also quite turbulent as well, from 2008 to 2012. I loved working in business improvement, seeing the whole mining value chain from end to end. And then in 2014, we got a new CEO. And of course, he wanted to restructure the whole company to what he wanted. So we all had to apply for our jobs again. This was probably the most stressful restructure for me because I was freshly divorced. My parents needed financial support and I had debt. So I couldn't afford to lose my job. I really had to play the game of the whole restructuring business and apply for positions and go for interviews and all of that. But during this time, I saw one of my colleagues who was in a very good financial position. He had saved and he was very clever. His name was Steve. He did all his sums and he took a package. And I was like, I want to be Steve. I want to be able to take a package when the opportunity comes around. So I survived this restructure, but I started making plans. I started making plans for what I would do so that I could take a package the next time around. And I knew that there would be an opportunity to do this again because mining is cyclical. And I knew that within the next 7 to 9 years, possibly we'll get a new CEO, possibly we'll go through a restructure again. So what did I do in those intervening years? I made sure I really understood my finances. It's really important for all of you in the school to make sure that you're in control of your own finances, understanding your own spreadsheets, understanding your net worth, making sure you have budget, all of those sort of things. So I really made sure that I got I understood my finances better. I worked really, really hard. Yeah, I put my hand up for every single thing. I volunteered for things. I really became somebody who people wanted to work with, because I wanted to make sure that I, was sort of indispensable and somebody that people wanted to work with. I studied every course the company offered. I put my hand up to do courses and all that sort of thing. Very importantly, I built my network. That was really, really important. I joined Women in Mining South Africa. So I volunteered and on all of that. And there's where I got to know a lot of very interesting and special people. And I dreamt about a different way of being, not being tied to a company and being able to do my own thing. So I dreamt of all of that. I also started a podcast, which was very useful for me to be able to explore my own creative side and a nice outlet for having conversations with interesting people who also built my network. So in that sort of intermediary time between the restructure where I'd made the decision that I wanted to leave and the restructure where I could eventually leave, I did a lot of things to sort of up my profile and to make sure that I'm somebody that people would want to work with inside of Anglo and outside of Anglo. So to recap, here's my restructure timeline. In 1999, there was a BHP Bulletin merger. I was in China. I came back for my boyfriend. Sad story. Let's not do that. Then in 2002, CSR. I survived, but they didn't give us any increases. So I decided that I needed a change and I left. 2008, the global financial crisis. The commodity prices tanked. We had a big restructure. All the technical people were consolidated and I survived. But I ended up with a terrible boss. And then I decided to move from there. Then in 2014, we got a new CEO. I was very, very stressful. Consolidation, all of that, I survived. But then I started making plans. What am I going to do when the next restructure comes around? Then finally, 9 years later, in 2023, we got a new CEO. And I also got blessed with a very horrible boss at that point in time, who was trying to get rid of me. So it was really, really a sign from the universe for me that it was time for me to head out and do my own thing. This specific restructure was as a result of a potential takeover by BHP Billiton. So I decided that I was not going to stay around and I was going to have my own adventure. So in 2023, I said goodbye. I have to mention that I did not hate my job. Okay? It wasn't as if I really hated everything I was doing. I loved the teams that I was working with, and that's probably the saddest part, is to say goodbye to the teams I was working with. But I wanted to be in the world in a different way, and I wanted to be able to forge my own path. And I wanted to redesign my life to be more aligned to my own values. And for that, I thought I needed some time to think. So that's why I went on a sabbatical for a year to think and to learn and to do a whole bunch of projects that I'd been putting off and wanted to actually spend time with. So just to recap on restructures, why do they happen? Okay, so you can see there's a number of reasons why the company might restructure. Normally it's about commodity and price volatility. There might be efficiencies. Efficiencies basically just means they want to get rid of people because they don't want to pay, because the labor bill is normally the highest. There might be technological advancements, which means we don't need specific people anymore. And that's very true of AI at this point in time. Declining ore grades, mergers and acquisitions. And for me, I think reasons 1, 4, and 8 were the reasons why my company's restructured and why I had to reapply for positions. So what do you need to consider when a downturn comes along or when a retrenchment comes along? So it's very important for you to future-proof your career. And I already mentioned a bit earlier what I did to survive for the next couple of years and to start mapping my own path. So you heard earlier from Naomi, which skills you need to be focusing on. So keep learning. Don't stop learning. I want to urge you to be smart with your money. Don't spend more than you earn. And just be responsible. You need to be really boring with your money, is what I think. Be the person that everybody wants to work with. You heard earlier about EQ and teamwork. So be that person that people want to work with. And then once again, keep building your network. And you're already part of GSSA. So find other places where you can connect with like-minded people. And then when a restructure does come around and you are deciding, should I stay? Should I go? What should I be doing? There's a couple of questions you can ask yourself. Because you might initially, when you're sitting in the little room and everybody's telling you about the new roles and the organograms and what you should be, you might just go, no, stuff it, I'm not going to do this, okay? But you have to think about, are there people to consider? I mean, I had to, in 2014, I had elderly parents that I had to look after. So I couldn't just leave at that point in time. I had to actually stay and stick it out. And sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you need to stick it out and stay. You have to think about what's your financial position and really get to know what your financial position is. I read quite a lot of business books and all of that sort of thing to understand what my net worth was, how to budget, all of that. So I would advise you do the same. Understand what the job market is like. You might be tempted to just put your hand up and leave and take a voluntary severance package, but are you sure you're going to actually find a job out there? Or is it maybe more wise to stick it out in your company and find other opportunities there? And maybe you can even thrive. In 2014, when we had that restructure, I got put into an amazing team. I loved working with them. And I actually thrived in between 2014 and 2023 when I actually left. And you could do the same. I mean, you could find a wonderful team to work in and you can thrive, but still knowing in the back of your mind that at some point there's going to be a commodity downturn, something's going to happen. So always be prepared for what might happen. And then if you can take a break, okay, for me, it's really important to think about how will you use that break and how will you use it constructively. So I was very deliberate about the break that I took. So obviously, of all these questions, the last one is my favorite because I just come off a sabbatical. And what did I do in my sabbatical? Okay, so firstly, I did some courses in coaching because I've always been interested in coaching. So I did that. I went on some amazing adventures. I went to the Himalayas. I did lots of walking and hiking and thinking. I did a yoga teacher training course because I've always wanted to get deeper into my yoga practice. And then I also did a project. Okay, so I did a series of podcasts with other people who had taken constructive breaks from work to learn about how they had used that time and what they had done and why they had done it. So I interviewed all of these people about taking constructive, deliberate breaks from work and how to use that time constructively. And these people had taken breaks from between 3 months to a year, actually one up to 18 months. And all of them had given it a lot of thought about how they wanted to use the time and all of that. So why did they take it? Okay, some of them reached burnouts. And I'd really like to urge you to not reach a point where you have to take a break because you've reached burnouts. Start to read the signs of your own body and do something to not reach that stage. Some people felt they were misaligned with the company's values, and they wanted to be in a place where they could live a life in purpose. Some people were forced to take breaks because of their health and thyroid issues and that sort of stuff, or caring for a family member. There were a couple who wanted to take a year off to study, to do an MBA or a master's. Some people wanted to pivot. I think in the previous presentation, we heard about pivoting and redesigning your life in a different way. Some people wanted to go on grand adventures and really get to immerse themselves in a different culture. For me, it was really important to have time to reflect and reinvent myself and then starting to pursue a new business. So what did people do on their breaks? They rested, they watched too much television, they had adventures, they studied, they spent time with family, they reflected, looked for new jobs, all of that. But even though people took breaks for different reasons and came to it in a different way and spent their time in different ways, they all came to the same conclusion at the end of their break, that they rediscovered themselves, they realigned themselves with their purpose, they realized that time is really precious. They had a much better idea of what they wanted from from future employers and what they would put up with and whatnot. And what you also realize very, very quickly is that the rat race is artificial. If you're in it, you're always thinking about the next run, the next thing, but you always have to run your own race. And sometimes somebody else's race looks very different to your race. So, what do I want for each and every one of you on this call? Number one is to, no matter where you are in your career or what you decide to do, for you to keep on growing and learning and aligning yourself with skills that are going to help you into the future, is for you to achieve some sort of sense of fulfillment, that you can actually do something that's aligning with your purpose and with your values and with which you feel that you can actually work for a specific company. Balance, there is, like one of the previous speakers says, there is no such thing as work-life balance. It's all around finding things or being in harmony with the rest of your life, and holistically looking at everything in your life to make sure that one of them is not making sure you're not showing up positively in another part of your life. It's really important for each of you to develop coping strategies that are going to help you through times of stress and turbulence. What are you going to do when there's a company restructure? Because what normally happens when the company starts restructuring is that the worst and the best of people come out. All of a sudden, you see everybody's true natures, and how are you going to cope and deal with that? What are you going to do to position yourself in a way that looks positive but doesn't stab other people in the back? Because that also sometimes happens. And then the last thing is to live your life with awareness and to know what the impact of your decisions will be on other people. And if you can find all of these elements in your current career or in your future career, I think you will be winning at life.